Aloha, or should I say, beware. Hawaii, the tropical paradise known for swaying palms, sparkling beaches, and gentle waves, hides secrets beneath its serene beauty. Beyond the tourist postcards, some islands are shunned by locals, whispered about in hushed tones, and known as forbidden places where spirits roam freely. Tonight, we venture into the 25 haunted islands in Hawaii that locals call forbidden, where mist rolls across volcanic cliffs, shadowy figures watch from hidden coves, and whispers from the past echo across moonlit shores. These islands are more than breathtaking landscapes. They are haunted realms where the living trespass at their own peril, and the dead never rest. Niʻihau, often called the Forbidden Island, is one of Hawaii's most mysterious and secluded places. Lying just 17 miles southwest of Kauai, this small island is home to fewer than 200 residents and remains closed to the public. Access is granted only by special permission from the island's owners, the Robinson family, who have kept Niʻihau almost entirely isolated from the modern world for more than a century because of its secrecy and silence. Countless stories have grown around the island: whispers of ancient spirits, sacred chants in the wind, and unseen presences that seem to linger between the ocean and the cliffs. To the Hawaiian people, Niʻihau is not merely an island, but a living memory. It is the last stronghold of the old language, customs, and traditions that have nearly vanished elsewhere. Life there remains deeply connected to nature and ancestry. Every mountain and shoreline carries a story. And the spirits of the kapuna, the ancestors, are said to still walk among the living. Locals believe that these spirits protect the island, ensuring that it remains hidden from those who would disturb its peace. But to those who have come too close, or dared to land without permission, the experience has often turned eerie. Fishermen from Kauai tell of nights when the sea grows strangely calm around Niʻihau. They describe hearing chanting across the waves and chanting Hawaiian prayers that echo in the distance, though no one can be seen. The chants rise and fall with the wind, sometimes joined by the faint beat of drums. Those who have heard them say the sound is hauntingly beautiful but heavy with sorrow, as if the ocean itself is remembering the past. Some believe these are the voices of long-departed kahuna, priests who once performed rituals along the island's cliffs to honor the gods. There are also tales of shadowy figures moving along the shoreline at dusk. Fishermen who have approached the island report seeing torches flickering among the rocks. Though Niʻihau's residents insist that no one goes there at night, one sailor, who tried to set foot on the beach during a calm evening in the 1970s, claimed that as he walked across the sand, the air grew cold and the wind began to whisper his name. He turned and saw dark shapes gliding toward him, though they left no footprints. Terrified, he fled back to his boat. When he reached the deck, he found the sand on his shoes had turned wet and black, like ashes. Even military personnel who have been near Niʻihau during training missions have reported strange phenomena. In the 1950s, pilots flying over the island spoke of their radio signals suddenly failing, followed by the faint sound of chanting in their headsets. A few reported seeing glowing lights moving across the cliffs far below, lights that moved with purpose. Unlike any reflection or flare, when they circled back for another look, the lights had vanished and the instruments flickered back to normal. No official explanation was ever recorded. The people of Niʻihau themselves seldom speak of ghosts, but they respect the old stories deeply. They tell of the night marchers, spectral warriors who cross the island on certain moonless nights. According to legend, these ancient spirits retrace their battle paths, carrying torches and beating drums as they march toward the sea. Residents say that sometimes, on very still nights, you can hear the rhythmic thumping of their footsteps in the distance, followed by the faint rustle of leaves, though the air is still. Another local story tells of the cliffs near Pipiaplaya Point, where a group of ancient priests once performed sacrifices to the gods of the sea. It is said that anyone who approaches those cliffs after dark will feel an unseen hand brush against their shoulder, as if warning them to leave. Visitors from neighboring islands who have tried to land near this area have described sudden gusts of icy wind in the middle of the tropical heat. The temperature drops sharply, and whispers fill the air. One diver, who explored the waters off the point, claimed to see figures moving just below the surface, long hair drifting like seaweed, eyes pale and watching. Some of the older residents tell stories of ancestors who appear in dreams, their presence both protective and unsettling. They say the spirits watch over the island's people and warn them of danger before major storms. Several villagers have dreamed of ancestors standing by the ocean, pointing inland. The next morning, the waves would begin to rise. For the locals, these dreams are not superstition but guidance from the unseen world. The haunting of Niʻihau is not like the restless hauntings of abandoned houses or battlefields. It is a spiritual haunting, woven into the island's identity. Every gust of wind, every rustle of grass seems to carry the weight of the past. Outsiders who have glimpsed the island from afar often describe an overwhelming sense of being watched, a feeling both humbling and unnerving. The island seems alive, aware of every presence that draws near. In Hawaiian belief, such sacred places are known as wahipana, locations where the veil between the worlds is thin. Niʻihau may be the last true wahipana of the Hawaiian chain, untouched by modern noise and electricity, a sanctuary for both the living and the dead. Its isolation is not merely a rule, but a form of protection, a way to preserve the spirit that still breathes in its stones and tides. Those who have seen Niʻihau from the air describe it as hauntingly beautiful. Red cliffs glowing in the sunset, golden beaches untouched by footprints, and the deep blue of the Pacific stretching endlessly beyond. For centuries, the island has kept its secrets, its stories whispered only to those who belong. Kahula, the smallest of the 8 main Hawaiian islands, lies in the shadow of Maui, an arid and windswept stretch of land, surrounded by churning seas. Once sacred, later scarred, and now forbidden to live upon, Kahula carries the heavy weight of history and sorrow. For generations, Hawaiians have called it the Island of Spirits, a place where the voices of the past whisper through the dust and the wind, where the souls of warriors, victims, and wanderers still roam among the ruins left behind. Long before its military years, Kahula was revered by native Hawaiians as a sacred site dedicated to Kanaloa, the god of the ocean and navigation. Priests and voyagers once came to its cliffs to offer chants and prayers before embarking on great journeys across the Pacific. Stone altars still stand in silence, worn by centuries of salt and sun. The island was seen as a place of transition between worlds, a training ground not just for sailors, but for souls. To die on Kahula was believed to be a passage into the spiritual realm, where ancestors would guide the departed into the next life. But time and tragedy changed the island's purpose. During World War II, the U.S. military seized Kahula for use as a bombing range. Explosions thundered across the land for decades, shattering cliffs, stripping the soil, and leaving craters that scarred the sacred ground. Generations of Hawaiians were forbidden to set foot on their ancestral island, and many believed the constant bombardment awakened something ancient spirits that had once rested peacefully, now disturbed and restless. Those who have visited the island since its reopening for restoration tell unsettling stories. Workers sent to clear unexploded ordnance have described feeling watched as they move through the silent valleys. The island is dry, barren, and eerily quiet, except for the constant whisper of the wind. Yet at times, voices seem to ride on that wind, cries, chants, or sobs that vanish when one tries to listen closely. A few restoration workers have refused to return after hearing what they called the morning wind, a low, human wail that rises and fades like breath. Others report seeing flickering lights in the distance, like lanterns swaying in the darkness. At first, many believed these were the glow of campfires or work lights from other teams. But when they tried to approach, the lights would disappear only to reappear behind them moments later. Some claim these are the wandering souls of those who died during the island's violent past. The ancient Hawaiians sacrificed during rituals, the prisoners exiled there in the 19th century. Each spirit, it is said, guards a fragment of Kahula's history, forever bound to the land that holds their memory. At night, the island becomes even stranger. Those camping for research or cultural ceremonies describe hearing the rhythmic beat of drums echoing from the cliffs, followed by faint chanting in the Hawaiian language chants no one can fully recognize. The sound drifts with the wind, coming from no clear direction. The old navigational heiau, or temple sites, are said to be particularly active. Some visitors report seeing shadowy figures moving among the stones, heads bowed as if in prayer. One archaeologist, documenting ancient petroglyphs, claimed she saw a tall figure standing near the edge of a cliff, gazing out to sea. When she looked again, it was gone, but the impression of bare footprints remained in the dust. Elders from Maui speak with deep respect and caution about kahula. They say the island's moonlight's spiritual power is stronger than most can handle. It is not a place for casual visits. Offerings of tea leaves, flowers, and salt are often left before stepping ashore. The locals believe the spirits can sense a person's intentions. Those who come with respect are watched, but unharmed, while those who arrive without understanding may find the island turning against them. There are stories of boats whose engines fail inexplicably near the coast, as if the island itself rejects entry. Others have reported sudden gusts of wind, capsizing small vessels that came too close after dark. During the years of bombing, even military personnel noticed strange happenings. Pilots described seeing flickers of light on the ground where no one should have been. Some reported hearing what sounded like chants through their radio static low, rhythmic syllables that didn't match any known frequency. A few soldiers swore they saw figures moving through the smoke after detonations, standing upright amid the dust and flame, watching silently. These sightings were dismissed as mirages or nerves, yet they persisted across decades. When cultural groups were finally allowed to return to conduct ceremonies in the late 20th century, many reported overwhelming emotions. Participants described feeling waves of sorrow and heaviness, as though the land itself was grieving. During one ceremony, a participant claimed to see shapes rising from the earth, faint, translucent forms dancing in a slow circle before fading into the wind. Others have heard the ocean around the island roar louder than anywhere else in Hawaii, as if the god Kanaloa himself still stirs beneath the waves. Kahula today remains uninhabited, though restoration efforts continue. The scars of war still mark its surface, and unexploded ordnance remains buried beneath the soil. Yet for many, the true danger lies not in what can explode, but in what can be felt. Visitors say that time behaves differently there. Watches stop, compasses spin, and the mind becomes strangely fogged. Some describe feeling drawn toward certain places, craters filled with silence, ruins of old structures, or ancient stone altars that seem to hum with unseen energy. When they leave, they often dream of the island for weeks afterward. Endless winds, glowing lights, and distant voices calling their names. To the Hawaiian people, kahula is a reminder, a scarred but sacred symbol of endurance, spirit, and reconciliation. It is said that the souls who wander there are not trapped, but waiting for the land to heal, for the people to return in reverence, and for the balance between past and present to be restored. The island may appear lifeless, but to those who listen closely, it breathes with ancient life. Moloka, often called the Friendly Isle, hides one of Hawaii's most haunting histories. Along its northern shore lies the Kalaupapa Peninsula, a place of stunning beauty and deep sorrow. Towering sea cliffs rise behind it, cutting the peninsula off from the rest of the island. For more than a century, Kalaupapa was a place of exile, leprosy settlement, where thousands of men, women, and children were forced to live and die in isolation. Today, the disease is long gone, but those who visit the area still feel the lingering presence of those lost souls. The wind carries whispers, the earth feels heavy with memory, and the spirits of the forgotten seem to wander through the mist. In the mid-1800s, leprosy, known to Hawaiians as Ma'i, spread rapidly through the islands. At the time, little was understood about the disease, and fear overtook compassion. In 1866, the Kingdom of Hawaii established Kalaupapa as a place of quarantine. Those suspected of having leprosy were taken from their homes, torn from their families, and shipped across rough seas to this remote peninsula. Once there, they were left to survive as best they could. The steep cliffs made escape impossible, and the ocean offered no mercy. Over the years, more than 8,000 people were sent here, and many never saw their families again. Kalaupapa became both a prison and a world unto itself. Despite the suffering, the residents built churches, homes, and a fragile sense of community. Missionaries such as Father Damien and Mother Marianne Cope brought care and dignity to those who had been abandoned. But even with compassion and faith, death was constant. Graves still covered the peninsula, their markers worn smooth by the salt wind. The land holds those memories deeply, and it is said that their spirits have never truly left. Visitors and workers who have stayed at Kalaupapa describe a heavy silence that falls after sunset. The wind seems to shift direction without warning, carrying with it faint voices that sound like chanting or crying. Some who walk the narrow roads at night have seen shadowy figures drifting between the trees or standing quietly near the old church. They vanish when approached, leaving behind only a faint trace of cold air. Park rangers who maintain the historic site speak of hearing footsteps on gravel paths when no one else is around. Others report the soft creak of doors opening and closing in the abandoned hospital buildings, long after the last patients were gone. One of the most common stories told by visitors is of ghostly figures seen walking along the cliffs overlooking the sea. The cliffs of Moloka are some of the highest in the world, and the view from above, Kalaupapa, is breathtaking and chilling. On foggy mornings, hikers on the overlooked trails have reported seeing people in old-fashioned clothing standing near the edge, gazing toward the horizon. When the mist clears, those figures are gone. Locals believe these are the spirits of those who once looked out from Kalaupapa, longing to see their families again across the ocean. In certain parts of the settlement, cold spots appear suddenly, even under the warm Hawaiian sun. Tour guides say that near the remnants of the old patient cottages, the temperature can drop sharply, accompanied by the faint scent of medicine or burning oil lamps. Some have felt an invisible hand brush against them, gentle but unmistakable. Cameras and phones have malfunctioned in these same spots, batteries draining within minutes, as if the energy of the place itself is drawing power. There are stories of the old church, St. Philomena, where Father Damien once preached. Visitors have seen flickering lights within the church long after it has been locked for the night. When opened the next morning, everything inside is undisturbed, but the smell of incense lingers. A few people claim to have heard soft hymns drifting from the church at dusk, voices in harmony, though no one is there. It is said that the faithful souls who found solace there in life still gather in spirit to pray. The hospital ruins are another source of mystery. Built to care for those too weak to move, it now stands silent, windows broken, walls covered in vines. Those who enter describe a suffocating atmosphere, as if the air itself carries grief. Some hear coughing, labored breathing, or the rustle of bedsheets when the wind is still. Once, a restoration worker reported hearing someone whisper, "Aloha," close to his ear, so close he felt the breath, but when he turned, he was completely alone. The valleys surrounding Kalaupapa are no less haunted. The cries of the wind often resemble human voices, and locals say these are the echoes of the sick calling out for loved ones who never came. In the distance, drums sometimes seem to beat faintly from nowhere, a rhythm that fades as quickly as it begins. During full moons, shimmering lights appear along the shoreline, gliding like lanterns. Old residents believed these lights were the souls of the departed, making their journey to the next world, following the sea as their guide. Not all spirits of Kalaupapa are restless. Many who visit the site feel an overwhelming sense of peace mixed with sadness. It is as though the land remembers not just the suffering, but the compassion and courage that grew from it. The presence of Father Damien, who gave his life tending to the patients, is said to linger gently in the church and surrounding grounds. Some visitors report feeling a sudden warmth or comfort when praying at his grave, as if blessed by a benevolent hand. Still, the weight of history remains palpable. The peninsula's isolation amplifies every sound, every breath of wind. Even birds seem to sing more softly there. The ocean crashes endlessly against the cliffs, as if echoing the pain and endurance of the souls who once lived along its edge. For some, the haunting is not a curse, but a reminder that Kalaupapa is sacred ground. A place where humanity and tragedy intertwined in unforgettable ways. Today, only a few residents remain, descendants of former patients who chose to stay. They live quietly, caring for the land and preserving its history. Visitors come by special permit, guided by respect and reverence. Many leave changed, describing a feeling of connection that lingers long after they depart. The spirits of Kalaupapa do not threaten, they simply remind. They are witnesses of a painful past, carried forward by the wind that never stops blowing through Moloka's valleys. Lanai, the smallest inhabited island in Hawaii, is known for its quiet beauty, red-dusted trails, and remote beaches untouched by time. But along its northern coast lies a place few dare to linger, after darker stretch of treacherous shoreline known as shipwreck shores. Here, the sea meets jagged volcanic rock, and the remains of lost vessels rest half buried in coral and sand. The waves crash with a mournful rhythm, and the wind carries faint cries that seem to belong to another time. Locals say the spirits of shipwrecked sailors still wander these shores, trapped between sea and sky, forever searching for a way home. The legend begins centuries ago, when Lanai's northern waters were feared by sailors from around the world. The currents here are fierce, and hidden reefs lurk just below the surface. Ancient Hawaiians called this area Kaioloia, the restless sea. According to oral tradition, even the most skilled navigators avoided sailing too close, believing the ocean here was alive with ghosts. They spoke of phantom canoes gliding silently across the water, guided by the spirits of warriors lost in battle, their chants rising with the surf at night. When Western ships began crossing the Pacific in the 18th and 19th centuries, many met their end on these same reefs. Whaling vessels, merchant ships, and naval transports all fell victim to the unpredictable winds and shifting tides. The skeleton of one such vessel, a World War II-era Navy tanker, still rests on the reef, today's rusted frame leaning like a grave marker against the endless blue. Time and salt have eaten away at its steel, but even now, on moonlit nights, some claim to see lanterns glowing faintly on its deck, as if the crew never left. Fishermen from nearby Maui tell of strange encounters in the waters near Lanai. They say that when the sea is calm and the moon is bright, you can hear voices calling out from the wreck's horse, desperate shouts for help carried on the wind. At first, the cries sound distant, almost like birds. But if you listen too long, they grow clearer, until words begin to form. One fisherman swore he heard someone shout his name, though he was alone. Startled, he looked toward the reef and saw a pale figure standing in the shallow surf, staring back at him, before sinking silently beneath the waves. The beach itself carries its own mysteries. In the morning, visitors sometimes find footprints pressed deep into the sand, leading toward the water but never returning. They vanish at the tide line, as if their owners had simply walked into the sea. On stormy nights, the wind howls through the rocks in a way that almost resembles weeping. Those who have camped near shipwreck shores describe hearing the creak of ropes, the snap of sails, and the distant crash of timber sounds of ships long gone, repeating their final moments in the endless cycle of the surf. There is a local story about a ship that ran aground near Lanai in the late 1800s. The crew, mostly foreign sailors, unfamiliar with Hawaiian waters, tried to swim ashore after their vessel broke apart in a sudden storm. Only a few made it to land. The others were swept away, their bodies never found. For weeks afterward, islanders reported seeing ghostly figures walking the beaches, their faces pale and hollow, their clothing soaked but never drying. Dogs would bark toward the shoreline at night, and fires left burning on the sand were found mysteriously extinguished by morning. Some say those lost sailors still roam the beaches, reliving their desperate attempt to reach land. Even modern visitors have strange tales to tell. Photographers exploring the rusted wreck of the World War II tanker have reported feeling a cold breeze pass through them, even under the blazing sun. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, and recordings pick up faint whispering voices. One tourist recalled setting up a tripod on the sand and noticing footprints appear behind her fresh and wet, though no one else was near. When she turned around, the beach was empty, but the air was thick with the smell of salt and smoke, as if the ocean itself was remembering the fire of a sinking ship. At dusk, the atmosphere of shipwrecked shores changes entirely. The light fades to gold, then gray, and the sea begins to glow faintly with phosphorescent algae. The waves shimmer, and some say the glowing outlines of figures can be seen walking beneath the surface, drifting just below the waterline. Locals call them the sailors of the deep. They are said to appear only when the tide is high and the wind is still. Their silhouettes swaying gently with the current, faces turned upward as if waiting for rescue. Old Hawaiian stories speak of a guardian spirit who watches over the northern coast of Lanai, a shape-shifting figure known as a kupawa, who protects the island from intruders but guides the lost to the afterlife. Some believe this guardian still wanders shipwrecked shores, appearing as a shadow on the rocks or a glowing light above the waves. Travelers who come with respect may feel a strange calm settle over them, while those who mock or disturb the wrecks often report nightmares and misfortune afterward. The kupawa is said to judge every visitor, deciding who may pass and who must face the spirits of the sea. During storms, the hauntings become stronger. Locals say lightning sometimes strikes unnaturally close to the beach, illuminating ghostly shapes standing in the rain. The wind carries a chorus of krismen calling for help, women weeping, children praying. The ocean seems to roar louder, as if demanding remembrance. When the storm passes, the sand is smooth and untouched, as though nothing had happened, yet the air feels heavy, charged with something unseen. Despite its eerie reputation, Shipwreck Shores is breathtakingly beautiful. The sea stretches endlessly into the horizon, the rusting hulls of wrecked ships rising like monuments to forgotten tragedies. The beach is often deserted, save for seabirds and the occasional traveler drawn by curiosity. Yet, even in the bright light of day, there is a feeling of watching eyes, of unseen presences lingering at the edge of sight. The island's quiet isolation amplifies every sound. The whisper of waves, the rustle of wind turns them into echoes of memory. Haleoclub, the great volcano of Maui, rises more than 10,000 feet above the Pacific. Its vast crater, a landscape of red cinder, swirling mist, and haunting silence. To the Hawaiian people, this is a sacred mountainy place, where gods once walked and spirits still linger. But beneath its beauty lies something mysterious. As day turns to night and the wind begins to whisper across the slopes, strange phenomena stir within the mist. Locals and travelers alike tell stories of ghostly figures glowing along the ridges, chants echoing from the valleys, and unseen presences watching from the shadows. They call it the haunting of Haleoclub, where the spirits of warriors and wanderers roam the sleeping volcano. The name Haleoclub means house of the sun. According to ancient legend, the demigod Maui once climbed this mountain to capture the sun and slow its passage across the sky, giving daylight more hours to nourish the earth. But long before the tale of Maui was told, this mountain was known as a place of great power, realm between the living and the divine. High priests and kahuna once came here to perform rituals, seeking communion with the gods. It was also believed to be a resting place for spirits traveling to the next world. The crater was seen as a sacred gate, its depths connecting heaven and earth. Even now, many native Hawaiians approach the summit with reverence, offering prayers or chants before stepping onto the trail. Yet, over the centuries, Haleoclub has also become a place of haunting. Travelers who hike its trails after dark speak of glowing shapes moving silently across the cinder slopes. They appear as faint blue or white figures, tall, indistinct, almost shimmering. Some say they are the ghosts of ancient warriors who once guarded the mountain. Others believe they are the spirits of travelers who lost their way in the fog, forever wandering between worlds. Hikers have reported seeing distant torches flickering in the crater, only to vanish when approached. Rangers stationed near the summit have noticed lights moving in patterns across the landscape, even when no one else was known to be there. The most chilling stories come from those who have camped overnight within the park. At high altitude, the air is thin, and the world feels impossibly still. But when the clouds roll in, the quiet turns uneasy. Some campers describe hearing low chanting carried by the wind, ancient Hawaiian hymns that seem to rise from the crater itself. The voices echo through the darkness, rhythmic and haunting, fading in and out as if traveling from another time. When the mist thickens, shapes move within it, long shadows that glide past silently, leaving a sudden drop in temperature behind. One hiker who ventured out of his tent late at night claimed he saw a line of faintly glowing figures marching along the ridge, each holding a spear of light. They vanished the moment he blinked, but the footprints in the cinder were real large, bare, and too many to count. Locals believe these are the spirits of the Ali'itha noble warriors who once served the gods and protected the island. According to Hawaiian legend, the night marchers, or waka aipor, occasionally traveled the mountain paths on certain moonless nights. They are said to be the ghosts of ancient chiefs and their armies, returning to retrace their old roots of power. Those who encounter them must lie face down in respect and never look up, or risk being taken into the spirit world. Hikers who have camped along the sliding sands trail claim that the ground sometimes trembles faintly at night, followed by the rhythmic sound of marching feet. The sound passes by, and then silence returns, heavy and absolute. The volcano's crater, stretching 7 miles across, adds to the otherworldly atmosphere. By day, it looks like the surface of another planet, vast, empty, and silent. But by night, strange lights have been seen floating across its floor. Some appear like lanterns drifting through the fog, others streak upward before fading into the stars. Scientists suggest these may be reflections or atmospheric effects, but locals know better. They say the lights are souls, traveling between realms under the watchful eye of the gods. Helioclobe-S mists are equally mysterious. They move like living things, rising suddenly from the crater floor and wrapping around the cliffs. People who have walked through them describe feeling disoriented, as if the world shifts around them. Some have reported hearing whispers, voices, speaking Hawaiian words they cannot understand. A few claim the mist sometimes forms faces, ancient and solemn, watching silently before dissolving into the air. One ranger who spent years stationed at the summit told of a night when fog rolled in so thick that visibility dropped to nothing. He was alone in the observation station when he heard a slow, steady drumming sound outside. Thinking it was the wind rattling something loose, he stepped out and froze. The air was cold, the mist glowing faintly in the moonlight. Then came the chanting, deep, rhythmic, ancient. He stood perfectly still as a line of dim figures emerged from the fog, crossing the path below him. They moved in silence, then faded into the crater as if swallowed by the mountain. When morning came, the ground was covered in fresh footprints leading toward the rim, but none returning. Even daytime visitors sometimes feel the mountain's energy. The air seems charged, heavy with unseen presence. Some people become dizzy or emotional without knowing why. Guides remind travelers that this is sacred land, filled with the spirits of ancestors. Offerings of flowers or lei are often left near stone altars as gestures of respect. Those who do so say the mountain seems calmer afterward, as if acknowledging their reverence. But others who have ignored local warnings, those who shouted, took rocks, or treated the site carelessly, have reported streaks of bad luck afterward. Cars break down without reason, cameras malfunction, or strange dreams follow them, home dreams of standing in mist, surrounded by chanting voices they cannot escape. As night falls, the summit of Heliocleb becomes one of the darkest places in Hawaii. The stars blaze so brightly they seem close enough to touch, and the silence is almost sacred. Yet even under that cosmic beauty, there is an undercurrent of something ancient watching. The wind carries more than sound, it carries memory. The volcano has seen centuries of life and death, of ritual and reverence, and it holds those energies still. To stand atop Heliocleb is to stand between worlds, the living and the spirit, the seen and the unseen. At the far western tip of Oahu lies Kaina Point, a wild and wind-swept place where the land ends and the deep Pacific begins. The waves crash violently against the rugged cliffs, and seabirds circle overhead in great, lonely arcs. To most visitors, It is a place of stunning natural beauty, a sanctuary where the ocean meets the sky. But to locals, Ke'eana Point is something far deeper, far older, and far more mysterious. It is a place of transition, a sacred gateway between the living world and the spirit realm. Hawaiian legend says that Ke'eana Point is where souls journey after death, guided by unseen forces toward the brink of the island. There, the spirits take their final leap into the next world, departing into the sea and vanishing beyond mortal sight. This ancient belief still lingers like mist in the air, giving the area a reputation as one of the most haunted places in all of Hawaii. Visitors who come here at sunset often describe an overwhelming sense of presence, as though hundreds of unseen eyes are watching from the cliffs and dunes. The air grows heavy, the winds die down, and the usual sounds of crashing waves seem to hush into a strange stillness. Many say that's when the chants begin, low, rhythmic voices that rise and fall like the tide itself. Some claim they can make out Hawaiian words in those distant tones, as if ancient warriors or priests are calling across the centuries. Those who have dared to stay after dark tell of shadowy figures that move along the rocky trails, tall, silent forms with no faces, gliding rather than walking. A few hikers have reported following what they thought were other travelers ahead, only to realize the figures had vanished completely when they rounded a bend. Others describe sudden drops in temperature, even on humid nights, and the feeling of something brushing against their arm or shoulder, as though an invisible hand is guiding or warning them. Local fishermen who cast their nets near Ke'eana's shores often speak in hushed tones about what they've seen. One fisherman told of a night when the sea was unusually calm. As he pulled his line, he saw glowing shapes beneath the water pale lights drifting just below the surface, moving in perfect unison toward the open ocean. At first, he thought it was bioluminescent algae, but when the lights began to rise, taking on human-like silhouettes before fading into mist, he dropped his net and fled, leaving it behind. He never fished that spot again. There are stories, too, of phantom drums echoing through the cliffs during full moons. Some say it's the sound of the night marchers, the restless spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors. They are believed to roam at night, retracing old battle paths, their spectral torches glowing in the distance. Locals insist that if you ever hear the drums or chanting of the night marchers, you must lie face down in respect, never look directly at them, and never interrupt their passage. To do otherwise, they say, invites death. One park ranger once recounted his experience after staying overnight to monitor wildlife. He said that around 2 in the morning, the air grew strangely still. The waves seemed to stop crashing, and the only sound was the faint beat of drums in the distance. Thinking it might be kids playing pranks, he turned his flashlight toward the sound, but the beam illuminated nothing but swirling mist. Then he felt it. A strong gust of wind that smelled faintly of salt and flowers, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps moving behind him in the sand. When he turned again, there was no one there. His radio, which had been working all night, suddenly went silent, and the batteries drained instantly. The next morning, he left the park before sunrise and requested reassignment. Spiritual practitioners in Hawaii believe Ke'eana Point's energy is both protective and perilous. It's said to be a laina, or leaping place of souls, where the newly departed transition from one world to the next. For this reason, locals approach it with deep reverence. Offerings of flowers, leis or stones are sometimes left at the cliffs to honor those who have passed. Yet, some say, if an offering is made insincerely or out of curiosity, strange misfortunes follow: troubles, sickness, or unsettling dreams of drowning in dark water. Modern visitors with cameras have captured unexplained phenomena: hazy orbs floating near the cliffs, translucent shapes that resemble figures walking along the horizon, or streaks of light crossing the frame in empty scenes. Skeptics attribute these to lens flares or wind-blown sand, but others believe they are the souls caught mid-journey, visible for only a heartbeat before fading back into the unseen. One particularly eerie tale comes from a young couple who visited the point to watch the sun rise. They parked near the end of the trail before dawn and began their walk as the sky turned gray-blue. Halfway down the path, they saw what looked like an elderly Hawaiian woman in traditional dress standing by the rocks. She was motionless, facing the ocean. The couple called out a greeting, but she didn't respond. When they blinked, she was gone. Only her footprints remained in the sand leading toward the edge of the cliff, where the wind erased them moments later. Even scientists who come to study the protected seabirds admit that there is something unusual about Ke'eana Point. The magnetic fields there are said to fluctuate in irregular patterns, sometimes interfering with compasses and drones. Some believe this could explain the strange lights people see, perhaps natural energy phenomena, or reflections off the ocean mist. But others aren't so sure. They say science can't measure what's sacred, and that Ke'eana's mysteries go beyond explanation. As the sun sets and the sky deepens into violet, the cliffs of Ke'eana glow faintly in the fading light. The wind rises again, carrying with it a chorus of distant voices that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. It is said that if you listen closely, you can still hear the chants of those who crossed over long ago, guiding the next souls toward their journey beyond the sea. The Puna coast of Hawaii's Big Island is a place where beauty and eeriness intertwine. It's a landscape shaped by fire where molten lava once flowed like rivers, carving through forests and villages before hardening into black stone. The ocean crashes against jagged cliffs, and steam rises from cracks in the earth, giving the land a breathing, living quality. Yet behind this raw magnificence, locals whisper that the Puna coast is haunted, not just by the memory of eruptions, but by the restless spirits of those who once called it home. According to ancient Hawaiian belief, the goddess Pele, the deity of fire, volcanoes, and creation, rules these lands. Her temper is legendary, her presence unmistakable. But Pele is not the only spirit said to wander the lava fields. The Puna coast, with its abandoned cottages and forgotten trails, is believed to be inhabited by the ghosts of those lost to fire, famine, and exile. Some were caught in eruptions, others perished while trying to flee, and some, locals say, never truly left. Visitors who come to explore the coast at dusk often report seeing strange shapes along the horizon, shadowy figures walking across the lava plains, illuminated briefly by flashes of ghostly light. They appear solid for a moment, then dissolve into the mist rising from the ground. At first, travelers mistake them for other hikers, but when they call out, there is no reply, only the low hiss of wind and the distant roar of waves. Fishermen who anchor near the cliffs have told stories of lights dancing along the shoreline, sometimes red, sometimes white. They flicker and dart between the rocks as if moving with intent. A few have followed them, thinking they were campfires or lanterns from other boats, only to find nothing but silence and the glow of molten cracks beneath the earth. The elders call these the Uhane, or wandering soul spirits, still drawn to the warmth of the lava that took their lives. One of the most unsettling tales comes from an abandoned cluster of cottages near Kapoho, once a thriving seaside village before it was buried by lava in 1960. The remains of the town now lie beneath hardened rock, but a few structures still stand at the edges of the flow, half buried, their windows empty, their walls scorched black. Travelers who have camped nearby claim to hear whispers at night, as if entire conversations are taking place just beyond the range of hearing. Some say they've heard laughter, soft, distant, and eerily joyful, like echoes of people who never realized they were gone. A group of hikers once reported seeing a woman in white walking near those cottages. Her figure glowed faintly under the moonlight, and her long black hair seemed to drift without wind. When they called out, she turned her head slightly but did not stop. Then, with a slow movement, she vanished, melting into the shimmer of heat rising from the ground. The hikers later learned that local legend speaks of a woman who lost her family in the eruption and spent her final days wandering the flow, searching for their remains. The Puna coast's haunting extends beyond visual encounters. Many visitors describe sensations they can't explain: sudden chills in the tropical air, the feeling of unseen hands brushing against them, or the sound of footsteps crunching over lava gravel when no one is nearby. Some claim to have heard chanting carried by the wind, rhythmic and ancient, echoing from somewhere deep within the blackened valleys. Locals believe these are the voices of the night marchers, the spectral warriors who patrol sacred grounds and ancient battle paths. To see them, it's said, is to stand on forbidden land. Those who hear their drums or chants must bow their heads and stay silent, for to look upon the marchers is to invite death. One park ranger who patrolled the coast years ago recounted his own chilling experience. He had stayed overnight near an old lava field to monitor illegal camping. Around midnight, he heard what he thought were footsteps and the faint sound of chanting. When he turned on his flashlight, the beam cut through steam rising from the ground, but there was no one there. Then the temperature dropped sharply, and his breath became visible. The sound grew louder, voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand, mixed with what sounded like distant drumming. He backed away, calling out to see if anyone needed help, but as quickly as it began, the sounds stopped. The next morning, he found his boot prints surrounded by dozens of faint footprints leading away into the lava field, bare feet, impossibly preserved in the hardened crust. Even the wind on the Puna coast seems to carry secrets. On especially quiet nights, some say it hums like a song, low and mournful. The locals call it the breath of the ancestors. To them, these haunted stories aren't just ghost tales, they're reminders that the land itself is alive, filled with mana, the spiritual energy that connects all living things. To disrespect it, they say, invites misfortune. Travelers who take small stones or bits of lava rock as souvenirs often report strange occurrences once they leave the island. Cars breaking down, sudden illnesses, recurring nightmares, or the sensation of being watched. Many eventually send the rocks back to Hawaii, apologizing in letters addressed simply to Peel. Post offices on the Big Island still receive dozens of such packages every year, tokens of regret from those who believe they angered the spirits of the Puna coast. Photographers drawn to the area's otherworldly beauty often capture more than they expect. In their images, strange lights appear hovering above the ground, or faint faces form within the steam. A drone operator once shared footage showing a figure standing still on the lava, plain perfectly human in shape, yet translucent. When he approached the spot later, he found only a patch of warm rock, glowing faintly in the fading light. As dawn breaks over the Puna coast, the mist begins to lift, revealing the black and silver patterns of hardened lava stretching to the horizon. The land feels quiet, then peaceful, but never empty. Locals say that at sunrise, the spirits retreat into the earth, resting until night returns. But even in the daylight, the air seems to hum with energy, like a memory that refuses to fade. Far beyond the main Hawaiian Islands, deep in the remote stretches of the Pacific, lies Niʻihau, small, jagged island rising abruptly from the sea. To the casual observer, it might appear desolate. Barren cliffs, no palm trees, no sandy shores, only wind, rock, and waves. Yet for those who know its history, Niʻihau is far from empty. It is an ancient outpost, a place that once echoed with life, and now, as many say, hums with the spirits of its forgotten people. Niʻihau, meaning toothed in Hawaiian, takes its name from the island's steep ridges that resemble teeth biting through the horizon. It is the southeasternmost of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, uninhabited now. But thousands of years ago, it was home to a thriving Polynesian community. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient terraces, irrigation systems, stone walls, and temples that suggest a well-organized society once existed there. But no one knows for certain why the people left or what became of them. Today, the island is strictly off-limits to the general public, protected as part of the Papanomakokia Marine National Monument. Only researchers and authorized visitors are allowed to set foot on its rocky surface. Yet even they, hardened by science and skepticism, have returned with stories that defy explanation. The first tales came from early expeditions in the 19th and 20th centuries. Sailors and scientists described an eerie stillness upon landing, followed by strange noises carried by the wind-soft chanting that seemed to come from nowhere. Some thought it was the ocean wind funneling through the cliffs. Others whispered it was something far older. When night fell, they reported seeing flickering lights on the slopes, as though torches were being carried up ancient paths, long since abandoned. Modern researchers tell similar stories. One team, studying bird populations, camped near the remnants of what they believed to be a ceremonial platform. As darkness fell, the wind grew unusually calm. Then, faint at first, they heard rhythmic chanting drifting through the air. The sound rose and fell in perfect cadence, echoing across the cliffs. Thinking it was an audio illusion caused by wind, one scientist tried recording it, but the device picked up nothing, only static and the faint crash of waves below. Another visitor recalled feeling the distinct sensation of being watched. She had been collecting soil samples near a ruined structure when she felt pressure on her back, as if someone stood directly behind her. When she turned around, there was no one, but her camera, hanging at her side, clicked on by itself and took a single photo. Later, when she reviewed it, the image showed a faint, misty figure standing among the stones, its outline human, but translucent and blurred. The ancient Hawaiians considered Niʻihau sacred, a gateway between worlds. It was said to be a place of the gods and ancestral spirits, a point where the boundary between life and death grew thin. Legends tell of navigators who would journey there seeking guidance from ancestors or blessings for long voyages. The island was both revered and feared, a place of power, where the spirits of chiefs and priests still lingered long after their bodies had turned to dust. For those who have visited, that sense of sacredness remains palpable. The air feels charged, the silence heavy. Even birds, thousands of them nesting along the cliffs, fall quiet at times, as if listening to something unseen. Researchers describe moments where time seems suspended, where the island feels aware of their presence. Some have reported equipment malfunctioning, without reason, compasses spinning, batteries draining, radios emitting bursts of static, followed by faint, indecipherable voices. One particularly chilling account comes from a marine biologist who spent 3 days conducting a survey near Niʻihau's northern ridge. On the second night, he awoke to the sound of drums. At first, he thought it was a dream. But when he stepped outside his tent, he saw what looked like small fires glowing along the upper ridge. Figures moved within the light, dark silhouettes, walking in slow procession. He called to his colleague, who emerged just in time to see the lights vanish one by one, leaving only the glow of moonlight on stone. The next morning, they found no trace of fires or footprints, only the faint smell of smoke drifting in the wind. Local Hawaiian elders, when told of these accounts, nod knowingly. To them, Niʻihau is alive with ancestral mana, the spiritual energy of the land. They say the chants heard on the wind are the voices of the kupuna, the ancestors, keeping watch over the island they once called home. The spirits are not hostile, but they demand respect. Anyone who steps onto Niʻihau without reverence risks disturbing its guardians. Photographs taken from the island often show odd phenomena: spheres of light hovering in mid-air, faces forming in the rock shadows, or streaks of brightness moving across the frame. Skeptics dismiss these as camera artifacts or reflections, but those who have been there in person insist that the air itself feels different, a mix of awe and unease that words can fully describe. Even from a distance, Niʻihau seems to radiate an aura of mystery. Sailors passing near it at night have reported seeing faint glows along the cliffs, as though lanterns were being carried up and down invisible paths. Others have heard what sounds like chanting carried over the waves, rhythmic and melodic, fading as quickly as it appears. Fishermen warn against approaching too closely. They say the spirits there don't welcome uninvited guests. For generations, Niʻihau has stood as a silent witness to Hawaii's deep past. Its ruins remain untouched, its secrets preserved by the isolation that has both protected and haunted it. To this day, scientists who set foot on the island follow strict cultural protocols, offering chants of respect before beginning their work. Even those who come for data collection feel the weight of the place, a sense that they are trespassing on sacred ground. When storms pass over the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, lightning often strikes Niʻihau more than any other. Locals say it peels fire, rekindling the island's ancient energy, illuminating the spirits that still dwell there. During these moments, flashes of light reveal the contours of the old terraces, the remnants of houses, and the outlines of forgotten temples. like ghosts of a civilization momentarily brought back to life. As the sea crashes endlessly against its cliffs and the winds sing through its ridges, Niʻihau remains shrouded in both history and legend. The chants that echo across its stones may be the voices of the past, or simply the music of nature, but for those who have stood upon its soil, there is little doubt that something sacred still breathes there. On the eastern shore of Kaho'ola, where jagged cliffs meet the restless Pacific, the wind never stops blowing. It carries the scent of salt, dust, and something older, something that feels like memory. The island, long scarred by war and weather, is now quiet, but those who have walked its forbidden edges say the silence is deceptive. Beneath the howling wind and the crashing waves, there are whispers, voices that belong not to the living, but to the ancient guardians of the land. Kaho'ola, once the sacred island of navigators and priests, is still considered a spiritual center of Hawaii. Before it was used for military training, it was a place where rituals were performed to honor the gods, the sea, and the stars. On the island's eastern shore, hidden among lava outcrops and thorny kaiau trees, lie ancient shrines, that once served as powerful spiritual anchors. The locals say that these sites remain guarded by ancestral spirits, and that those who trespass or disrespect the land will be met with swift punishment. Few people are allowed to visit Kaho'ola today. The island remains heavily restricted due to unexploded ordnance and environmental preservation. Yet a handful of restoration workers and cultural practitioners have ventured to the east shore over the years, and their stories are enough to unsettle even the most skeptical minds. One worker, part of a cleanup crew in the early 2000s, recalled his experience near an overgrown stone platform believed to be an ancient shrine. The day was calm and bright when he arrived. The ocean shimmered, the air dry and still. As he cleared brush around the stones, he felt a sudden drop in temperature, followed by a sound like soft chanting carried on the wind. At first, he thought it was his imagination or maybe one of his team members playing a prank. But when he turned, he saw no one. The chanting grew louder, distinct and rhythmic, echoing from the cliffs behind him. He called out, but his voice was swallowed by the wind. Then, as quickly as it began, the sound stopped. Moments later, clouds rolled in from the sea, dark and fast, and a heavy rain drenched the area for nearly an hour. When it cleared, the ground around the shrine was littered with fallen branches, as if the island itself had issued a warning. Others who have approached the shrines speak of figures appearing at the edge of their vision. They describe tall silhouettes, draped in flowing white, standing motionless among the rocks. When approached, the figures vanish into mist or dissolve in the shifting light. Some have seen glowing orbs drifting near the ground at dusk, moving slowly along invisible paths before fading into the cliffs. Cameras often fail to capture them. Local elders believe these are the spirits of kahuna, ancient priests who once tended the sacred sites. They are said to remain on the island to protect it from outsiders and to ensure the rituals of old are never forgotten. One legend tells of a priest whose spirit commands the winds themselves. When angered, he summons sudden storms from the ocean, punishing those who come without offering or prayer. Several accounts seem to confirm this. A small group of cultural volunteers once visited the East Shore to document remaining Niʻihau ruins. They performed the customary chant for entry, but one of them, an outsider unfamiliar with Hawaiian custom, laughed during the prayer. Within minutes, the clear blue sky turned gray. A violent gust of wind tore across the ridge, nearly knocking them to the ground. The waves below rose higher and higher, slamming against the cliffs with unnatural force. They fled inland, soaked and shaken. Later, when they returned to camp, the wind ceased as abruptly as it began. The elder leading the group told them quietly, "The kupuna were listening." Nighttime on the East Shore brings its own share of hauntings. Those who have camped near the area claim that the darkness feels heavy, thick, almost physical. They hear voices murmuring outside their tents, footsteps circling the camp, and the faint sound of drums echoing from the hills. Sometimes, flickering lights appear offshore, moving slowly across the waves like ghostly canoes. When approached, they vanish beneath the surface. One marine biologist, studying coral reefs near the area, described a terrifying experience. She and her team had anchored offshore for a night dive, planning to collect samples at dawn. Around midnight, she awoke to the sound of chanting, low and melodic, coming from the direction of the island. Looking toward the cliffs, she saw a faint firelight glowing along the ridge torches, moving in procession. Then, as she watched, the lights flickered out, one by one, until only the black outline of the island remained. When she told local colleagues later, they nodded solemnly. "That is, the Aumakua," one said, the ancestral spirits, reminding visitors that Kaho'ola belongs not to people, but to the gods. Some who have ignored those reminders have not been as fortunate. Stories circulate of divers who mocked the legends, taking stones from the shore or carving their names into the rock. Within days, they suffered strange misfortunes, boats capsizing without warning, equipment breaking in calm weather, sudden injuries with no clear cause. Many returned the stones, offering prayers of apology. Some even claimed the storms that followed them vanished once they made amends. Even the military, during their long occupation of the island, reported unexplained events. Soldiers stationed near the east shore spoke of hearing drums at night, seeing shadows that moved against the wind, and feeling unseen hands tugging at their uniforms. A few were so unnerved they refused to patrol certain areas after dark. One officer wrote in his log that an entire night watch fled their post when a bright orb of light hovered above the shrine ruins, pulsating and humming like a heartbeat before disappearing into the sky. Though decades have passed since the bombings ended, Kaho'ola still bears the scars, craters in the ground, twisted metal buried beneath lava rock. But around the eastern shrines, nature seems to heal differently. Vegetation grows thick there, shielding the stones from view. The air feels charged, the silence deep. Visitors describe a sense of being observed, not with malice, but with grave curiosity. If the spirits are measuring whether they are friend or foe, those who come with respect say they feel peace, even protection. They leave small offerings, flowers, water, chants whispered to the wind, and depart without incident. But those who come in arrogance or disbelief often encounter the island's wrath, sudden winds that overturn tents, equipment lost to inexplicable currents, or a deep, overwhelming dread that drives them away. On the rugged island of Moloka, far from the bustling lights of Honolulu or the tourist-laden beaches of Maui, lies a trail few dare to walk after dark. Peel's Trail. This narrow, winding path cuts through the volcanic heart of the island, its soil rich with blackened ash and ancient energy. It is said to be the domain of Peel, the goddess of fire and volcanoes, whose temper is as fierce as the molten rivers she commands. Locals speak of her not in legend, but in warning. For those who tread her path with disrespect often find that the island itself seems to turn against them. The trail begins near the cliffs overlooking the restless Pacific, where the wind howls like a living thing. Travelers who start their hike in the early hours describe a heavy silence, broken only by the crunch of gravel beneath their boots. Yet, as the day wanes and shadows lengthen, the air shifts, birds go quiet. The smell of sulfur seeps faintly from the earth, and the breeze grows unnaturally warm as if the mountain is exhaling. That is when the first whispers of Peel's presence begin. Some describe it as the feeling of being watched, like unseen eyes tracking every step. Others say they hear faint chanting, ancient and rhythmic, carried on the wind. There are accounts of fiery apparitions flickering in the distance, figures glowing red and gold, appearing for just a moment before dissolving into smoke. Local guides warn visitors never to follow these lights, for they are said to be Peel's messengers, leading the curious toward danger or madness. One of the most chilling encounters comes from a group of hikers who ventured onto the trail one late afternoon. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the volcanic slopes. The group decided to stop and rest by an old lava outcropping shaped eerily like a woman's face. As they sat, the wind began to rise, swirling around them in sharp, angry gusts. One of them joked about Peel's temper mistake that would mark the rest of their journey. Moments later, the ground beneath them seemed to vibrate. Pebbles shifted from the cliffs above, a sudden burst of warm wind struck with such force it nearly knocked them over. And then they saw it, a shape, glowing faintly red, standing several yards away on the path ahead. It looked like a woman draped in flowing white, her hair long and dark, her face hidden. The air shimmered around her as though bending under heat. Before anyone could speak, she vanished, replaced by the faint scent of smoke. The hikers fled the trail without looking back, each later swearing that unseen footsteps followed them the entire way to the road. Stories like these are woven deeply into the island's oral history. Elders say Pele's Trail is not merely a path, it's a sacred boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds. To cross it without offering respect is to invite her wrath. Many locals leave gifts of tea leaves, flowers, or small stones before entering, whispering prayers of protection. It's not uncommon to find such offerings scattered along the route, tiny tributes to the goddess, half buried in ash or nestled between cracks in the rock. Scientists and skeptics, of course, attribute much of the activity to natural causes. They argue that the apparitions are tricks of light caused by the sun's reflection on volcanic glass, and that the whispers and chanting are the result of wind funneling through narrow rock formations. Yet even those who don't believe in ghosts admit that something about Pele's Trail feels deeply unsettling. The air seems thicker there, charged with an energy that is difficult to explain. Even experienced hikers speak of sudden chills despite the heat, of flickering lights that dance just out of reach, and of inexplicable sounds echoing through the ravines. One researcher who spent several nights camping near the trail recounted waking to find glowing embers floating through the darkness, tiny, suspended sparks that hovered for several seconds before vanishing. There was no fire, no source, just a smell of burning earth and a faint, rhythmic thump, like the beating of distant drums. He later described the experience as both terrifying and strangely beautiful, as though the land itself were alive. Locals have long believed that Pele guards not only the island's sacred sites, but also its moral balance. She is said to test travelers who walk her trail. Those who show arrogance, greed, or disrespect often encounter misfortune, vehicles that break down, storms that appear out of nowhere, or sudden injuries without cause. But those who move with reverence, acknowledging her presence, sometimes speak of blessings instead. Calm weather, guiding lights, and an overwhelming sense of peace. Even the modern world has not dulled Pele's legend. Every year, a handful of tourists ignore warnings and pocket bits of volcanic rock as souvenirs. And every year, post offices across Hawaii receive countless packages of stones sent back by remorseful travelers who claim to have suffered endless bad luck after taking them. They often include handwritten notes, begging forgiveness from Pele, pleading for the curse to be lifted. As night falls over Moloka, the trail transforms entirely. The cliffs cast deep shadows, and the lava fields glow faintly under the moonlight. The wind carries faint, ghostly wails that some say are the cries of spirits who once angered the goddess. Others claim to have seen fiery footprints appear briefly on the ground, burning bright before fading into darkness. There are even stories of travelers being guided safely through dangerous terrain by a glowing figure who disappears once they reach safety, believed to be Pele herself, showing mercy to those who honor her. To this day, few venture far along Pele's Trail alone. The island is quiet, and yet the air hums with a sense of presence, a reminder that not all stories are mere superstition. The locals don't need proof. They know what they've felt, what they've seen in the glow of distant flames or the shimmer of moonlit smoke. On the secluded island of Lanai, far from the bustling resorts and golden beaches, lies a place few dare to explore after sunset, the old plantation known locally as the Garden of Shadows. Once a thriving agricultural estate, the plantation has long since fallen into ruin. The fields are overgrown, stone walls crumble, and the remnants of irrigation channels snake through wild undergrowth. But it is not just the decay that draws attention. It is the lingering presence of the past, the whispers of those who once worked and lived here, now said to haunt the land. Visitors to the Garden of Shadows often describe an unsettling shift the moment they cross its threshold. The air grows cooler, even on warm tropical nights. and the wind seems to carry hushed voices. Too soft to be understood, but impossible to ignore. Some report seeing shadowy figures flitting among the ruined stole silhouettes, moving just beyond the trees, vanishing when looked at directly. Others describe hearing footsteps on the cracked stone paths, though the plantation has been empty for decades. The plantation thrived during the early 20th century, producing pineapple and other crops that fed the growing demand for Hawaiian goods. Workers lived in simple wooden barracks and cottages, their lives long and laborious. Some historians say the harsh conditions and isolated location contributed to the unrest that seems to linger today. When the plantation closed, families left the land behind, but many locals claim that the spirits of the past could not let go. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a small group of hikers who arrived near the plantation at twilight. They had heard rumors of ghostly activity, but were skeptical. As they explored the overgrown fields and collapsed barns, the temperature dropped sharply. One hiker shivered despite wearing a jacket. Then they began to hear it, faint whispers drifting through the grass, rising and falling as if carrying a message from another time. They called out, hoping someone else was nearby, but the sound vanished as soon as they moved closer. As darkness fell, shadowy figures appeared along the edges of the property. One figure, standing near the old processing shed, seemed to watch them from behind a broken wall. The hikers tried to approach, but each step toward the shadow made it fade, only for another figure to appear in the periphery. The entire area seemed alive with motion, yet, when they tried to focus on anything directly, it disappeared. Even the wind, once gentle, began to swirl in sudden gusts, chilling their skin and carrying the faint scent of smoke and earth. Locals, who have spent time near the Garden of Shadows, insist that the activity is not random. They speak of spirits lingering near the old homesteads and irrigation ditches, protecting the memories of those who labored here. Some claim the plantation is a thin place where the boundary between the living and the dead grows fragile after sunset. It is said that the whispers are warnings, the shadows are echoes of former lives, and the sudden chills are signs of disapproval. One particularly eerie story comes from a cultural practitioner who visited the site to conduct a small ceremony honoring the workers of the past. As he walked among the ruins, he heard the unmistakable creak of wooden floorboards behind him. He turned, but the space was empty. When he knelt near the old well to offer a prayer, he felt the ground trembled beneath his knees and the temperature dropped to near freezing. A soft voice whispered his name, only audible when the wind shifted. He completed his ritual and left quickly, convinced that the spirits were watching, judging, and guiding him simultaneously. Even daytime visits are not free from strange occurrences. Some hikers report hearing laughter echoing across empty fields, or glimpsing fleeting shadows in abandoned cottages. Cameras sometimes malfunction, with lights flaring unexpectedly or photos capturing unexplained streaks of movement. One photographer reported taking dozens of pictures along a fence line, only to find a faint figure appearing in nearly every frame. A translucent presence that seemed to float just above the ground. The Garden of Shadows has earned a reputation among both locals and travelers as a place to respect and fear. Stories circulate of visitors who ignored warnings touching crumbling walls, moving objects, or entering the old quarters without care, experiencing sudden illnesses, equipment failures, or unnerving dreams afterward. Some say these are subtle forms of retribution from the spirits who linger, ensuring that the sanctity of their resting place is maintained. Elders of Lanai speak of the plantation as more than a site of labor and industry. They describe it as a repository of memory and emotion, a place where the lives, struggles, and sorrows of past inhabitants remain embedded in the land itself. Walking through the Garden of Shadows, they say, is like walking through the collective consciousness of those who lived and worked there. It is a haunting not born of malice, but of remembrance. Nighttime amplifies the experience. The shadows stretch longer, merging with the overgrowth and crumbling stone. The faint glimmer of moonlight casts eerie patterns across the ruins. Whispers rise from the earth, indistinct yet persistent, as if telling stories that cannot be fully understood. Travelers often report a feeling of being followed, of eyes tracing their every move, and of footsteps that echo their own. Yet, when they turn, no one is there. The wind along the old plantation fields carries strange scents as well: earth, smoke, and the faint aroma of tropical fruit, as though the past still lingers in fleeting moments. Hikers who pause to breathe it in sometimes report a sudden sensation of weightlessness or dizziness, a feeling of crossing into a realm that overlaps with the living world. It is here, amid these sensations, that the Garden of Shadows earns its name, a place where darkness and memory merge, and the line between present and past grows thin. For those who approach with respect, the garden offers glimpses into history, a connection to the lives once lived and the toil that shaped the land. For those who come in disbelief or disregard, the shadowy figures and chilling whispers serve as warnings, reminders that the past does not vanish simply because it is ignored. The plantation, abandoned yet alive in memory, continues to assert its presence in ways both subtle and terrifying. Hana Bay, perched on the eastern coast of Maui, is a place where the Pacific stretches endlessly, its waters glittering by day and turning an inky black under the night sky. To the casual visitor, it may appear as a tranquil haven: palm-fringed shores, gentle waves, and soft sand. Yet beneath this serene beauty lies a haunting history, one whispered by locals and travelers alike. The bay is said to be haunted by the spirits of fishermen who never returned from the sea, their presence lingering long after their bodies were claimed by the waters. Locals speak of Hana Bay with reverence and caution. The bay was once a vital fishing ground, and generations of families relied on its bounty. But the ocean, generous as it could be, was also merciless. Sudden storms, rogue waves, and treacherous currents claimed many lives. Over time, the spirits of these lost fishermen became part of the folklore surrounding Hana Bay, appearing in fleeting glimpses and sounds that defy explanation. Witnesses often describe seeing apparitions gliding across the water in the early hours of dawn or just as twilight falls. The figures are usually faint, human-shaped, but with an ethereal glow that sets them apart from ordinary travelers. Some appear rowing invisible canoes, others standing silently at the bow, staring toward the shore. Those who have seen them report a chilling sense of familiarity, as if the spirits are aware of the living observers, but remain untouchable. Caught between the realms of the living and the dead, the haunting is not limited to visual sightings. Many visitors have heard strange sounds carried on the wind: the distant crack of a paddle, the hollow clink of a fishing net, or the anguished cries of men lost at sea. The sound often appears to come from the center of the bay, echoing over the water, only to fade just as suddenly, leaving nothing but the roar of the waves and the whisper of the wind. One local fisherman recalls being anchored near the mouth of the bay when he heard cries for help in the dead of night. He swung his flashlight across the water, but saw nothing. When he returned the next morning, he discovered that his anchor line had been mysteriously coiled into perfect loops, as though handled by invisible hands. The shorelines of Hana Bay hold their own mysteries. Visitors have reported seeing footprints appearing in the sand, leading toward the ocean. When they approach to investigate, the tracks vanish, as if the sand itself refuses to hold a record of these ghostly wanderers. Sometimes, these prints seem fresh, detailed with toes and heel imprints, yet no one is present, and no tide could have formed them naturally. Locals say these are the footprints of the fishermen, retracing their final paths along the beach, eternally bound to the waters that claimed them. One of the most unsettling experiences comes from a young couple who camped near the bay for a night of stargazing. Around midnight, they were awakened by the sound of waves breaking differently than usual, soft at first, then growing into a rhythmic pounding. The apparitions seemed to move with intent, pointing toward the horizon as if urging them to look. The couple later recounted that they heard low, mournful chants echoing across the water, voices in a language they could not understand. By the time they dared to approach, the figures had dissolved into the night, leaving only the glimmer of moonlight on the waves. Hana Bay's haunting has persisted across generations. Stories passed down through families speak of fishermen who return home only in spirit, appearing to warn of storms or to guide others away from danger. Some elders say the spirits are protective rather than malicious. They patrol the waters and the shoreline, guiding the living while seeking release for themselves. Others believe the fishermen are trapped, replaying their final moments, unable to move on until the bay itself is respected and revered. Even modern technology seems unable to capture the full truth of Hana Bay. Photographers sometimes report anomalies in their images, glimmering figures standing on the water, shadows where no one should be, or sudden flashes of light that vanish upon closer inspection. One documentary crew filming the bay at night heard the unmistakable sound of a canoe scraping against rocks, only to find no vessel when they followed the noise. Their equipment recorded no such movement, leaving them with only the inexplicable sound and the sense of a presence hovering nearby. Visitors often describe a sensation of being watched while walking along the beach. The wind carries a peculiar weight, and the chill of a sudden gust can make the air feel almost alive. Some swear they can feel a brush of air across their shoulders or a subtle tug at their clothing, as though unseen hands are acknowledging their presence. The experience is both eerie and strangely intimate, a reminder that Hana Bay is not just land and water, but a place where the past and present intersect. Locals maintain respect for the bay through offerings and ceremonies, leaving flowers, shells, or small tokens on the shore. These gestures are said to appease the spirits, ensuring that the fishermen remain at peace and continue to watch over those who tread near the water. Visitors who ignore the warnings sometimes report misfortune, equipment failure, sudden illness, or feeling lost in the darkness, even when the path is clear. Many return to the bay later, leaving a quiet offering and whispering a prayer, seeking forgiveness and acknowledgement from the unseen guardians of the sea. Hana Bay remains a place of quiet wonder and quiet fear. By day, it is a jewel of Maui's coastline, its waters shimmering in sunlight and its sands inviting exploration. But by night, it transforms. The bay becomes a liminal space where the veil between the living and the dead thins, where shadowy figures walk across the water, and ghostly cries mingle with the natural sounds of waves and wind. Those who visit often leave changed, carrying the impression that Hana Bay is not simply a scenic destination, but a living memory, haunted by the souls of fishermen who continue to patrol the waters they once loved. Perched in the heart of Oahu, Punchbowl Crater, formerly known as the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific Crisis, as a striking landmark. It slopes lush with tropical vegetation and commanding a view of Honolulu below. By day, it is solemn and serene, with neat rows of white headstones standing as silent witnesses to the sacrifices of thousands of soldiers. But by night, locals say the crater takes on an altogether different presence, one that cannot be explained by the mind alone. The whispers tell of restless spirits lingering along the slopes, still tethered to the earth long after their service has ended. Though the cemetery was established to honor those who gave their lives in wars from the early 20th century onward, its history predates even that. The Punchbowl itself is a volcanic tuff cone, a natural amphitheater carved by ancient eruptions. Its geological formation has always inspired awe, but some say it also harbors energies that make it easier for the departed to linger. The combination of sacred purpose and natural structure seems to create a focal point for what many describe as the uncanny. Visitors recount experiences that range from subtle to chilling. One of the most common reports is the appearance of ghostly figures dressed in military uniforms from various eras: World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam. They are seen standing among the headstones, sometimes at attention, sometimes moving along the slopes as if on patrol. These apparitions are described as translucent, almost shimmering in the evening light, vanishing when approached too closely. Some witnesses have claimed to see soldiers saluting, then fading into thin air before anyone could respond. Disembodied footsteps are another frequently reported phenomenon. Tourists strolling the pathways often hear the distinct crunch of shoes against gravel or the steady cadence of marching. Yet, when they turn to look, no one is there. The footsteps sometimes continue alongside the living, echoing across the crater, and stop abruptly, leaving only an oppressive silence in their wake. Others have described a feeling of being followed, the hair rising on the back of their necks, as if unseen eyes are tracking them across the manicured slopes. The evening air in Punchbowl Crater carries its own peculiar weight. Many visitors report sudden temperature drops, inexplicable chills that settle over the body like a cold hand. Some have felt shivers running down their spine while standing among the headstones, even on warm, tropical nights. The phenomenon is often accompanied by an eerie stillness, a moment when the natural sounds of birds or distant traffic seem to vanish, leaving only the faint rustle of leaves and the quiet hum of something unseen. One particularly unsettling account comes from a young couple who visited just before sunset. They had planned to watch the city lights emerge below the crater while walking along the upper trails. As the sun dipped, they noticed figures in dark uniforms among the gravestones, standing perfectly still. At first, they assumed other visitors, but as they approached, the figures vanished. Soon after, they heard the unmistakable sound of marching in rhythm, coming from the very slope beside them. Heart racing, they called out, but no reply came. The footsteps circled them for several moments, then stopped abruptly as a gust of wind swept through the crater, carrying a faint metallic scent that lingered in the air. Another visitor, a retired military officer, claims to have felt the presence of someone behind him while walking alone. He described a profound sense of being observed, a weight pressing on his shoulders, though no one was there. When he glanced at the nearby headstones, he could swear that one of them seemed to shimmer, the etched letters glowing faintly. Though he touched nothing, he said he felt a warmth, a sense of acknowledgement, as if a spirit were reaching out to him. Punchbowl Crater is also said to produce sounds that have no discernible source. Some hear whispers that rise and fall, indistinct phrases carried on the wind. Others report hearing voices chanting names, perhaps those of soldiers buried within the cemetery, though the words remain incomprehensible. On rare occasions, the hum of bugle calls has been reported after dark, a haunting echo of military ceremonies long past. Photographs taken at dusk sometimes capture blurred figures or orbs of light hovering over rows of headstones, even when the lens should have shown nothing. Local lore maintains that these manifestations are not malicious. Many believe that the spirits of Punchbowl remain to honor their comrades, and to ensure that the living remember the sacrifices made on these slopes. The apparitions are often thought to be reenactments of familiar military routines: inspection, marching, saluting. Yet their presence can be unsettling, especially for those unprepared for the inexplicable. Elders warn that while the crater is a place of reverence, it is also a threshold of thin space where the boundary between the living and the dead grows fragile at dusk. Even those who come with reverence report experiences that defy rational explanation. Nighttime visitors sometimes feel sudden pressures against their bodies or hear distant voices calling their names. Equipment used for recording often malfunctions. Cameras capturing light anomalies or sound devices picking up bursts of static, accompanied by indistinct murmurs. These reports, though anecdotal, are frequent enough to suggest that Punchbowl's reputation for haunting is more than mere legend. For generations, the cemetery has been treated with solemn respect, its headstones maintained meticulously, ceremonies observed regularly. But the stories of ghostly soldiers, mysterious footsteps, and sudden chills persist, quietly shared among locals and visitors alike. Tour guides who walk the slopes at dusk often tell these stories with a mixture of caution and reverence, urging tourists to move slowly, to observe quietly, and to honor the spirits who remain. Punchbowl Crater endures as both a memorial and a haunting. By day, it is a symbol of sacrifice, peace, and reflection, its white headstones glowing in the sun. By evening, it becomes a liminal space where the past lingers, where ghostly figures in military attire walk unseen paths, and where the living are reminded of the weight of history. Those who visit leave with a sense of awe, sometimes tinged with unease, knowing that the spirits of Punchbowl remain ever vigilant, patrolling the slopes, marching silently, and honoring the memory of those who gave everything on behalf of their country. At the southernmost tip of the Big Island lies Calais, known as South Point, a place where the land plunges dramatically into the Pacific, and the winds sweep across jagged cliffs with relentless force. By day, it is a place of stark beauty, with rugged terrain, wild grasses, and waves crashing against volcanic rock. But as the sun dips below the horizon and darkness spreads across the water, Kalei transforms into something far older and more mysterious. Locals whisper that this sacred point is haunted by the spirits of ancient Hawaiians, guardians of the land who linger to protect their heritage and honor their ancestors. Kalei has long been revered in Hawaiian culture. It is considered a point of transition, where the living world meets the spiritual realm. Ancient Hawaiians used the cliffs for ceremonial purposes, and many believe that the mana, or spiritual power, of the area is exceptionally strong. Over time, stories of ghostly encounters have become part of the local lore. Witnesses speak of shadowy figures standing on the cliff edges, watching the ocean with quiet vigilance. These silhouettes appear human at first, but they move in ways that defy explanation, gliding across the rocky terrain or disappearing entirely when approached. One frequent phenomenon reported by visitors is the sound of chanting. Low, melodic, and ancient, these voices drift through the night wind, seemingly coming from the cliffs themselves. Some describe it as a welcoming ritual, others as a warning. A lone hiker who ventured to the edge just after sunset recalled hearing soft chants that seemed to rise and fall with the rhythm of the waves. When he followed the sound, he found only empty rocks, yet the chanting continued for several minutes before fading into silence. Locals say these are echoes of ancient ceremonies, the spirits preserving their traditions through the ages. Phantom canoes are another haunting sight at Salé. Many witnesses report seeing small vessels appear offshore in the darkness, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Sometimes they seem to row themselves across the water, their paddles moving in perfect synchrony, though no one is visible. The canoes vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving ripples across the ocean as the only evidence of their presence. Fishermen and hikers alike have shared stories of standing on the cliffs, gazing at the horizon, only to see these ghostly vessels appear and disappear like spirits, testing the patience of the living. Shadowy figures on the cliffs often evoke a sense of awe and dread. Visitors describe sudden gusts of wind that chill the skin, accompanied by the impression of being watched. One family exploring the area at dusk recalled that their youngest child pointed toward a dark shape on a distant cliff, insisting it was a person. When the adults looked, the figure was gone, leaving only a faint outline against the rocks, as if the night itself had swallowed it. Even experienced hikers, accustomed to the elements of Kalei, report an unnerving feeling of presence and awareness, that they are not alone, even in the vast, empty landscape. The cliffs themselves seem to amplify the haunting. Steep and jagged, they descend sharply to the turbulent ocean below. Some witnesses claim to see figures perched at the very edge, poised over the waves. These apparitions are often motionless, standing like sentinels. Yet those who look away for a moment might find the figure has moved, seemingly without traversing the space in between. The wind whistles through the rocks, carrying faint echoes of voices and footsteps. Yet when hikers investigate, the ground shows no sign of intrusion. Even the plants and terrain at Kalei seem alive with memory. Twisted grasses sway as though guided by unseen hands, and the stones along the trails often appear to have been disturbed without explanation. Many locals treat the area with deep respect, leaving small offerings of flowers or shells at certain points along the cliffs. It is believed that these gestures honor the spirits and prevent misfortune for those who visit. Those who ignore the sanctity of the site often report sudden disorientation, falls, or inexplicable cold spots that seem to follow them across the landscape. One striking account comes from a group of overnight campers who set up near the cliffs. Peering into the darkness, they saw figures moving along the edge, glowing faintly in the moonlight. One of the campers called out, but there was no response. The shapes vanished, leaving only the sound of wind and distant waves. By morning, the campers noticed that the footprints leading along the cliffside had disappeared entirely, as if the earth itself had refused to hold them. The ocean at Kalei also seems attuned to the spirits. Fishermen speak of seeing flickers of light beneath the water, like lanterns moving slowly along the reef. Some interpret these as ancestral canoes guiding or warning travelers. Others report the sound of splashing or paddling, though no boat is present. Locals say that the spirits are particularly active during certain lunar phases, when the tides are high and the moon casts a silver glow over the cliffs and waves. Kalei's haunting is not considered malevolent. Instead, it is a reminder of the island's history and the power of its original inhabitants. The spirits are guardians, maintaining the sacredness of the land and preserving the memory of their ancestors. Respectful visitors often describe a sense of awe, a connection to something ancient and enduring. They feel the presence of the past and the weight of tradition pressing gently against the living world. A reminder that Kalei has always been more than just land. It is a meeting place of worlds. Even today, the southern tip of the Big Island remains largely wild and isolated. Few venture there after dark, but those who do often leave with stories that are retold in hushed voices. The cliffs, the winds, and the ocean seem to harbor both memory and life. Shadowy figures appear, chants drift on the night breeze, and phantom canoes glide silently offshore. Kalei is not merely a scenic point. It is a sacred space where the spirits of ancient Hawaiians continue to watch over their land, reminding the living that some places are too powerful, too timeless to ever be fully at rest. Pupu Bay, on the remote island of Niʻihau, is a place few outsiders ever see. Known as the Forbidden Island, Niʻihau is largely closed to the public, its sandy beaches and hidden bays preserved in near-total isolation. Yet for those who have glimpsed Pupu Bay, even from a distance, there is a lingering sense that this secluded corner of the world holds more than natural beauty. Locals speak in hushed tones of spirits that wander its shores, phantom canoes that glide across the water, and sudden, inexplicable gusts of cold wind that pierce the tropical heat. Niʻihau's isolation has preserved not only its environment, but also the traditions and memories of its people. Long before outsiders arrive, Hawaiians inhabited the island, fishing, farming, and living in harmony with the land and sea. According to local lore, some of these spirits never left, tethered to the places where they lived, fished, and traveled. Pupu Bay, with its deep waters and quiet beaches, is said to be one of their favorite haunts. Visitors, usually fishermen or researchers who venture near the bay, recount a chilling stillness, even in the middle of the day. The waters lie unusually calm, the air heavy with anticipation. Some report seeing canoes appear, seemingly out of nowhere, moving silently across the surface. These canoes are described as shadowy, almost translucent, as if made of mist rather than wood. They glide with perfect balance, cutting through the water without a sound. Occasionally, a figure appears at the bow, shrouded in shadow, staring toward the shore or the horizon, then disappearing into the darkness. At night, Pupu Bay becomes more unsettling. The moonlight reflects on the calm waters, and the shadows along the shoreline stretch unnaturally long. People have reported seeing figures on the sand, dark silhouettes, standing just beyond reach. Some seem to watch silently, their presence impossible to ignore. When approached, the figures vanish, leaving only footprints that fade quickly, or traces of sand that seem freshly disturbed yet leave no other evidence behind. The wind at Pupu Bay carries its own peculiar chill, despite the tropical warmth of Niʻihau. Locals say this is the breath of the spirits, brushing against the living to warn them, remind them, or test their courage. Sudden gusts can catch visitors by surprise, shifting the air in an instant from stifling heat to bone-chilling cold. Hikers and fishermen alike have felt these gusts, often accompanied by a whisper, barely audible, as if someone is speaking just beyond the edge of hearing. Those who turn to look find no one there, and yet the sensation of being observed lingers long after. One haunting tale comes from a fisherman who had anchored near the mouth of the bay just before sunset. He was preparing his nets when he noticed a canoe drifting toward him. At first, he assumed another boat from the island, but as it drew closer, he saw no one aboard. The figure at the bow was shrouded in shadow, motionless, yet exuding a sense of intent. The fisherman reported feeling the air grow colder around him, his skin prickling, as if the spirits were brushing against him. Moments later, the canoe slipped silently beneath the water, leaving the fisherman alone, unsure if he had witnessed a ghost or a trick of the mind. The shoreline itself seems to hold memories of the past. Along the edges of the bay, scattered stones and twisted driftwood sometimes form shapes reminiscent of old fishing spots or ceremonial areas. Locals believe that these are markers left by spirits to guide travelers or to signify their presence. Those who ignore the unspoken rules of the bay, stepping too close to sacred spots or disturbing the shoreline, often report feeling sudden disorientation or a heavy sense of unease, as though the land itself is reminding them to tread carefully. Whispers are another recurring phenomenon. Some visitors describe soft, indecipherable voices carried on the wind, rising and falling like waves. At times, the whispers sound like old chants, echoing the rituals of ancient Hawaiians. Others claim to hear urgent calls, as if someone is trying to communicate, warn, or summon attention. Yet when approached, the voices vanish, leaving only the rustle of palm fronds and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Photographers and researchers who have attempted to document the hauntings often find their equipment acting strangely. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain unexpectedly, and images sometimes capture faint shapes that were not visible to the naked eye. On film, phantom canoes appear where none existed, and figures seem to drift along the shore before dissolving into mist. Even the most skeptical visitors struggle to explain these anomalies, leaving them to wonder whether they have witnessed the lingering spirits of Niʻihau's past. Despite the eerie experiences, many locals insist that the spirits of Pupu Bay are not malicious. They are guardians of the land and water, maintaining the sacred balance between past and present. Those who approach with respect sometimes report a sense of calm or guidance, a feeling that the spirits are acknowledging their presence rather than threatening it. Offerings of flowers or small shells left along the shore are believed to honor these unseen watchers, keeping the bay at peace for both the living and the dead. Pupu Bay remains largely untouched by modern development, its isolation preserving the mystery that surrounds it. The waters remain quiet, yet alive with unseen activity, the cliffs and beaches holding echoes of lives long past. Those who venture there often leave with more than photographs or memories. They carry a sense of awe and respect for the unseen world that lingers just beyond perception. Kō'ula, the smallest of Hawaii's main islands, has a history as turbulent as its rugged landscape. Once a sacred place for native Hawaiians, it later became a military training ground, scarred by years of bombing and neglect. Yet beneath the barren terrain and abandoned structures, locals insist that the island retains a spiritual presence, a lingering echo of the past. Certain areas, in particular, are believed to be cursed or haunted, spots where ancient rituals were performed and where tragedy has left its mark. Among these, the so-called luau's of the dead stand out, a place where the living are warned to tread lightly, and the echoes of the past are never far from the present. Visitors to Kō'ula often speak of an unsettling silence that blankets the island, even in daylight. Unlike other Hawaiian islands, Kō'ula lacks bustling resorts or dense vegetation in many areas, giving it a desolate, otherworldly atmosphere. Travelers recount feeling a weight in the air as soon as they set foot on certain parts of the island, as if the land itself is conscious of their presence. In the areas known as the luau's of the dead, this sense of oppression becomes nearly tangible, a heavy, suffocating force pressing against the chest, accompanied by a whisper of wind that seems almost deliberate, brushing past, as though unseen hands are guiding or warning. The first sign of haunting often comes in sound. Witnesses report hearing the faint, rhythmic beat of drums echoing across the desolate landscape. At first, it is subtle, a distant thrum that blends with the wind, but as the night deepens, the drumming becomes clearer, unmistakably deliberate, as though a celebration is underway somewhere just beyond the edge of sight. Those who have attempted to locate the source invariably find nothing: no fire, no assembly, no person. The drums seem to emanate from the land itself, vibrating through the soil and rocks, carrying a rhythm that feels both ancient and urgent. Alongside the ghostly percussion, many travelers report seeing shadowy figures moving at the edges of vision. At night, these shapes appear on ridges, along old pathways, or near stone foundations, dancing in patterns reminiscent of ceremonial luau. They are often tall and thin, shifting in and out of the darkness, never fully forming into tangible human shapes. Some witnesses describe the dancers as moving in perfect synchrony, their movements graceful yet unnerving, as if reenacting rituals that have been forgotten by time. One account comes from a small group of hikers who explored Kahulu at dusk. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, they noticed a rhythmic sound of drums beginning softly in the distance. The closer they moved to the designated areas of the luau's of the dead, the louder the drumming became, until it seemed to pulse beneath their feet. Out of the corner of their eyes, they glimpsed figures circling in the fading light, their forms dark and indistinct, yet undeniably moving in coordinated patterns. The hikers froze, paralyzed by a mix of awe and fear, and when they finally turned to leave, the figures had vanished, leaving only the relentless beat in their minds. The sensation of presence at these locations is often overwhelming. Visitors speak of a force pressing down, heavy and unyielding, as if the spirits themselves are testing resolve or warding trespassers. Some have reported shortness of breath, dizziness, or a sudden feeling of exhaustion while exploring the sites. Even those familiar with the island-esque climate note that these effects are not caused by heat or terrain. They occur even on cool nights, in open areas devoid of natural hazards. It is a presence that cannot be ignored, a reminder that Kahulu is more than a physical space. It is a spiritual landscape, shaped by the memories, ceremonies, and sorrows of those who once walked it. The land itself seems to participate in the haunting. Cracked stones form natural amphitheaters, overgrown paths suggest ancient gatherings, and caves or depressions in the ground occasionally exhale a cold, damp air that startles anyone passing by. Footsteps echo strangely, sometimes repeating in patterns that mimic the drum beats, suggesting that the dancers move invisibly among the living. Even when alone, visitors often feel watched, an unseen audience bearing witness to every movement. Locals warn that the luau's of the dead are not a place for disrespect or frivolity. Tales are told of travelers who mocked the land, who attempted to replicate the dances or pound on rocks in rhythm with the phantom drums, only to experience sudden misfortune, equipment failure, illness, or disorientation that forced them to leave the island. Others report that leaving offerings, flowers, shells, or traditional tokens can sometimes calm the spirits, allowing visitors to depart unharmed, a gesture of respect for the ancient energy that remains. The haunting of Kahulu is intertwined with its tragic history. The island served as a site of forced removal, labor, and military exercises, leaving scars both physical and spiritual. Yet it is also a place of sacred memory, where the rituals of the ancestors were performed, and where the land retains its mana. The luau's of the dead are the convergence of these histories, a site where celebration and sorrow, life and death, coexist in a spectral performance that continues long after the living have left. Those who witness the phenomena often leave with a mixture of fear and reverence. The drum beats echo in their minds long after they depart, and the image of dancing shadows lingers in peripheral vision, a reminder that the spirits of Kahulu are vigilant, patient, and deeply connected to the land. Even in daylight, visitors report feeling the weight of history pressing upon them, the sense that the island itself remembers every step taken across its surface. Kahulu's luau's of the dead endure as a haunting testament to the island's past. Phantom drums resound across the barren plains. Shadowy dancers perform in patterns no human eye can fully trace, and an unseen presence presses relentlessly against those who intrude. It is a place of caution and respect, where the veil between the living and the spiritual is thin, and where every gust of wind, every flicker of shadow, and every echo of drumbeat reminds visitors that some ceremonies are never truly finished, and some spirits never truly rest. Halawa Valley, nestled on the eastern coast of Moloka, is a lush and secluded paradise, where dense tropical foliage cloaks steep cliffs and rivers wind their way to hidden waterfalls. To the uninitiated, it is a place of breathtaking beauty, vibrant greenery, the scent of wet earth and flowers, and the soothing murmur of water cascading over stone. But beneath the valley's serene surface lies a lingering presence, a haunting energy preserved across generations. Locals warn that Halawa Valley is not just a place of natural wonder, but a sanctuary of spirits, ancient guardians who have never left the land they once called home. Visitors often recount an immediate sense of being watched as they enter the valley. Even during the brightest hours, the shadows of trees and cliffs seem to shift unnaturally, forming fleeting silhouettes that vanish when looked at directly. Some speak of faint whispers echoing through the dense foliage, soft chanting in a language long forgotten by most of the living. Those who pause and listen closely can sometimes hear the rhythm of drums and calls that seem to weave through the trees, emanating from nowhere, yet carried clearly on the wind. The waterfalls of Halawa Valley are a central focus of the haunting. The largest falls, hidden deep within the jungle, are said to be a meeting place for spirits. Many visitors describe an eerie glow around the cascade, as if light itself clings to the falling water. At night, some have seen orbs of soft, pulsating light moving between the trees, floating silently over the pools and disappearing into the undergrowth. These orbs are often accompanied by a sense of movement in the shadows, figures that appear and vanish in the blink of an eye. Glimpses of human-like forms with indistinct features, as if the spirits are playing at the edges of perception. One hiker recounted entering Halawa Valley near dusk, hoping to photograph the waterfall bathed in the warm light of sunset. As he ventured deeper, he noticed small glowing lights drifting between the ferns and vines. At first, he assumed fireflies, but their movement was deliberate, darting against the flow of wind and avoiding branches in ways that no insect could. The feeling of being observed grew stronger, a prickling awareness that intensified with every step. When he reached the base of the waterfall, he heard chanting that seemed to come from within the rock itself, a low rhythmic murmur that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. Shadowy figures are another common occurrence in Halawa Valley. Visitors describe shapes moving just beyond the line of sight behind trees, along riverbanks, and even in the mist rising from the falls. Some figures appear to stand silently, watching intruders, while others move fluidly through the trees, their presence suggested only by shifting shadows or the sound of footsteps on wet leaves. Locals claim these are the spirits of ancient Hawaiians, protectors of the land, guardians who patrol the valley and its sacred sites. They are not always malevolent, but their presence is undeniably powerful, a reminder that the valley is not merely a place to explore, it is a place to respect. The experience of sound in Halawa Valley is as chilling as the visual phenomena. Visitors often hear chanting that swells and diminishes as if carried by the contours of the land. At times, the voices sound close, whispering names or phrases in a cadence that mimics ceremonial songs. Then they fade abruptly, leaving only the roar of the waterfall and the rustle of leaves. Some hikers have reported hearing faint laughter or conversation, yet whenever they search for the source, no one is there. Even modern audio equipment struggles to capture these sounds clearly, leaving only static and faint anomalies, as if the spirits themselves interfere with recording devices. Temperature and atmosphere in the valley are also affected by the haunting. Sudden cold drafts appear unexpectedly among the tropical warmth. Often, when visitors encounter the shadowy figures or glowing orbs, these chills are accompanied by a weight in the air, a sense of presence pressing down from all directions, as though the valley itself is aware of intruders. Those who disrespect the land, straying from trails, disturbing plants, or mocking its sacredness, sometimes report feelings of dizziness, disorientation, or a compulsion to turn back. Locals insist these sensations are the spirits' warnings, gentle but firm reminders that Halawa Valley is not to be taken lightly. Stories of personal encounters abound. One group of kayakers reported paddling along the river that feeds the waterfall when they saw figures standing on the banks. These figures seemed to observe them silently before fading into the dense jungle. Moments later, Glowing orbs appeared on the water, drifting toward the group as if guiding them. The kayakers felt a mixture of awe and fear, sensing that the valley was aware of their presence and perhaps testing their respect for the land. Halawa Valley's haunting is intertwined with its history. The area was once home to thriving Hawaiian communities who cultivated taro, fished, and performed rituals to honor the land and the gods. Traces of these ancient practices remain: stone platforms, shrines, and worn paths which the spirits are believed to guard. Locals teach that the chants heard in the valley are remnants of these ceremonies, the voices of those who came before, preserved in the spiritual energy of the land. The glowing orbs, shadowy figures, and sudden cold gusts are manifestations of the valley's memory, a living archive of its ancestral presence. Even today, Halawa Valley retains its mystery and power. Few outsiders venture deep into its dense jungle, and those who do often leave with a sense of reverence. The waterfalls, cliffs, and riverbanks carry more than the sound of flowing water. They carry centuries of memory, of lives lived and lost, of rituals performed and respect demanded. Shadowy figures watch, glowing orbs drift silently, and ghostly chants ripple through the air. Halawa Valley is not merely a scenic destination. It is a sacred and haunted place, alive with spirits that remind the living of the enduring presence of the past. Lanai's Shipwreck Beach is a remote stretch of shoreline where golden sand meets restless ocean waves, a place both beautiful and unnerving. Its name hints at the tragedies that have occurred here over centuries: ships dashed against jagged rocks during storms, sailors lost to unforgiving waters, and tales passed down among locals of those who never returned. By day, the beach is serene, winds carrying the scent of salt and tropical blooms, waves lapping gently against the sand. By night, however, Shipwreck Beach is a different world, haunted by echoes of the past and spirits who seem unwilling or unable to leave. The first reports of haunting often come from fishermen and night hikers who find themselves drawn to the beach long after sunset. As darkness settles over Lanai, some say they can hear the distant sound of splashing, as though someone is struggling in the surf. Others describe hearing cries carried on the wind, urgent and desperate, fading as suddenly as they begin. Those who have approached the water report seeing fleeting shapes beneath the moonlight, indistinct but unmistakably human, disappearing into the waves before anyone can reach them. Apparitions walking along the sand are among the most commonly reported phenomena. Witnesses describe pale, translucent figures pacing the shoreline, their movements deliberate and measured. Sometimes they appear in pairs, other times alone, and always just out of reach. Locals claim these are the spirits of sailors who met their end here, forever retracing the steps they took before the sea claimed them. When approached, the figures often vanish, leaving behind only the faint impression of footsteps or an unnatural cold that seems to settle over the sand. Footprints are another chilling element of the haunting. Visitors often notice fresh prints appearing in the sand as they walk, leading toward the water or along the shore. Yet, when they try to follow them, the tracks vanish, as if swallowed by the earth itself. He followed cautiously, but halfway along, the footprints ended abruptly in unbroken sand, leaving him with a sense of being observed and alone. Some visitors have reported more active encounters. One couple, walking along the shore during a full moon, heard distant voices calling names in a panic. Looking toward the waves, they saw figures struggling as if caught in the surf, yet when they reached the water, nothing remained. Moments later, shadowy forms appeared on the beach behind them, pacing slowly in the sand, vanishing again when they turned to confront them. The couple described the experience as both terrifying and strangely sorrowful, as if the spirits were replaying moments of fear and loss, never fully able to move on. The ocean itself seems complicit in the haunting. Waves crash unpredictably along jagged rocks, sometimes louder than the tides warrant. And spray carries with it the scent of salt, mixed with something older, almost metallic. Fishermen often tell of hearing splashes in areas too shallow for a person to swim, accompanied by fleeting shapes in the water that disappear before they can be clearly seen. Even during calm nights, the sea seems restless, as though stirred by unseen hands, participating in the ongoing drama of the spirits that linger on the shore. Shipwrecked beaches' isolation amplifies its supernatural qualities. Few visitors come after dark, and those who do often report a profound sense of solitude that borders on unease. The wind carries whispers through the palms and rocks, and even the slightest movement of the waves seems amplified. Some claim that the spirits can manipulate the environment, creating sudden gusts of wind or causing the sand to shift unnaturally beneath their feet. These occurrences, though subtle, leave an impression that the beach is alive in a way beyond the natural world. Locals also speak of occasional lights seen offshore at night, small glimmers that seem to drift across the water without pattern or source. Some interpret these as lanterns from the past, carried by lost sailors, while others suggest they may be manifestations of spirits trying to communicate with the living. Those who witness the lights often report feeling a pull toward them, an almost magnetic attraction that is impossible to resist. Yet by the time they reach the shoreline, the lights vanish, leaving only the dark, restless ocean. Stories passed down by Lanai residents insist that the spirits are not vengeful, though they can be unsettling. Many are thought to be trapped in a cycle, replaying the moments of their final hours. A form of remembrance or unfinished journey. Some visitors who show respect walking quietly, leaving offerings, or simply observing from a distance report a sense of calm, a subtle acknowledgement that the spirits are aware of their presence and accept their reverence. Those who are reckless, loud, or dismissive of the beach's history, however, sometimes experience heightened activity, sudden chills, or feelings of disorientation that prompt them to leave quickly. The haunting of Shipwreck Beach is intertwined with its history. Centuries of maritime travel, storms, and shipwrecks have left their mark, both in physical remnants and spiritual presence. Rocks and tide pools near the shore seem to hold memory, the energy of lives lost, preserved in the very landscape. Locals treat the area with caution, warning visitors to respect the stories carried on the wind and the echoes that appear at night. The spirits of Shipwreck Beach serve as guardians, witnesses, and keepers of memory, ensuring that the tragedies of the past are never forgotten. Even today, in the quiet hours of night, the beach remains alive with unseen activity. Shadowy figures walk the sand, footprints appear and vanish, and splashes echo in the surf where no one is present. Faint cries drift on the wind, mingling with the scent of salt and sand. And mysterious lights hover offshore, flickering like lanterns from another time. Visitors leave Shipwreck Beach with a sense of awe, respect, and lingering unease, carrying the knowledge that the shoreline is not just a place of natural beauty, but a realm where the past and the present coexist, and where the spirits of sailors lost to the sea continue to walk, watch, and remember. Maui's Kipahulu coast is a rugged stretch of shoreline where towering cliffs plunge dramatically into the Pacific Ocean and waves crash relentlessly against jagged rocks. Remote and difficult to access, this coastline has long been a place of both awe and fear. Locals whisper that the cliffs hold the spirits of those who perished attempting to climb them, explorers and travelers whose fates were claimed by the treacherous terrain. Even today, visitors report unusual phenomena, sudden chills in the air, shadowy figures moving along cliff edges, and anguished cries carried by the wind. As though the cliffs themselves remember every fall and every struggle. The natural beauty of Kipahulu is undeniable. Dense greenery clings to steep slopes, and waterfalls spill into hidden pools below. By day, the coast seems tranquil, the turquoise waters contrasting with dark volcanic rock, while trade winds stir the foliage and the ocean sparkles under the sun. Yet, as daylight fades, a different atmosphere emerges. Those who venture here in the late afternoon or at night often describe a sense of unease, as though the cliffs are alive with the memory of tragedy. The air seems heavier, carrying an almost imperceptible hum, a vibration that prickles the skin and signals the presence of something unseen. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported manifestations. Visitors describe dark silhouettes perched on cliff edges, appearing to balance effortlessly despite the steep drop-offs. Some figures seem to move deliberately along narrow ledges, gliding across the rock as if defying gravity, while others appear stationary, watching silently as the living pass below. Attempts to approach these shadows are often met with sudden disappearance, leaving only the faintest outline against the rugged terrain. Many who witness them feel a cold draft brushing past their bodies, as though the spirits are close enough to touch, yet remain just out of reach. Ghostly cries are another recurring phenomenon along the Kipahulu coast. Locals and hikers alike have reported hearing screams or wails carried on the wind, often echoing across the cliffs in a haunting rhythm. These cries are described as anguished, urgent, and eerily human, sometimes accompanied by the sound of footsteps or the faint rumble of falling rocks. Travelers have recounted moments when the cries seemed to follow them, rising and fading in volume with no discernible source, leaving them disoriented and uneasy. Some claim the voices speak in a language they cannot understand, an old Hawaiian dialect or a chant that predates written records, linking the haunting to the ancient history of the island. The cliffs themselves seem to hold a memory of every tragedy that has occurred upon them. Jagged rocks, loose soil, and narrow ledges make navigation treacherous, and many who visit report an almost instinctive caution, a sense that the land is watching and judging each step. Sudden gusts of wind sweep across the cliffs without warning, unseasonably cold in the tropical air, as if the spirits are reminding intruders of their presence. Hikers often speak of a prickling sensation along their spine, a chill that travels in waves as they move closer to the more dangerous edges, particularly near ledges where accidents have historically occurred. One account comes from a climber who attempted to scale a lower cliff near a secluded waterfall. As he ascended, he felt an inexplicable weight pressing down on his shoulders, as though invisible hands were holding him back. Halfway up, he saw a dark figure standing on a narrow ledge above him, motionless, but clearly observing his progress. When he looked away for a brief moment, the figure vanished. Moments later, he heard a low, mournful cry echoing across the rocks, and a sudden gust of wind knocked him back toward a safer position, leaving him shaken and aware that he had not been alone. Another witness, hiking along the coastal trail at twilight, described seeing figures moving among the trees and rocks. Some appeared to walk along the cliff edges, while others were glimpsed in the shadows near waterfalls. Glowing eyes or faint outlines suggested awareness, as though the spirits were following the living silently, keeping them under observation. The hiker later reported that the air felt colder than it should have been, and that the whispers of the wind carried a haunting pattern, rising and falling in a cadence that mimicked cries of distress. Visitors also report that time feels different along the Kipahulu coast. Some speak of brief moments of disorientation, feeling as though hours have passed when only minutes elapsed, or experiencing sudden fatigue despite being in good health. Many believe this is a manifestation of the spiritual energy in the area, a reminder that the past and present coexist in a space shaped by tragedy and memory. Local guides emphasize caution and respect, noting that those who ignore the dangers of the cliffs or treat the land frivolously are more likely to experience unsettling encounters. The haunting of Kipahulu Coast is deeply tied to Maui's history and the stories of those who have come before. For centuries, the cliffs were places of both worship and peril. Ancient Hawaiians performed rituals along the coastline, honoring gods and spirits while navigating the treacherous terrain. Over time, accidents and natural tragedies added layers to the spiritual memory of the area, embedding echoes of human suffering into the cliffs, rocks, and wind currents. Today, the spirits that linger are believed to be guardians and witnesses, preserving the memory of the land's past while interacting subtly with the living. Even during daylight, some visitors report an uneasy feeling, a subtle pressure in the air, a sense that the cliffs are not merely scenic formations but active participants in an ongoing story. At night, the shadows lengthen, the cries carry farther, and the spirits become more perceptible, moving across the rocks and ledges in ways that defy human perception. Those who leave the coastline often recount experiences that linger in memory, the sight of figures at the cliff edges, the chilling gusts of wind, and the haunting cries echoing through the valleys. Ki'eana Point Lighthouse, perched at the western tip of Oahu, stands as a solitary sentinel overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Its white tower rises starkly against the coastal cliffs, guiding vessels through treacherous waters. But locals insist that the lighthouse is far more than a navigational aid. Stories of hauntings have circulated for decades, claiming that the spirits of former lighthouse keepers linger in its halls, pacing the balcony, tending to duties long abandoned, and warning the living with subtle, yet unmistakable signs of their presence. Visitors approaching the lighthouse often speak of an immediate shift in atmosphere. The coastal winds whip more sharply along the cliffs, carrying a salty temps mixed with a sense of tension that seems almost alive. Even during sunny days, the area around the lighthouse feels heavy, as though the land itself remembers the solitude and hardships endured by those who once maintained the beacon. The keepers' lives were often isolated and harsh, and many perished on or near Kaina Point, leaving behind restless spirits tethered to their posts. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of ghostly lights flickering in the windows. Tourists and locals alike describe seeing faint glows, sometimes steady, sometimes blinking, in the upper floors of the lighthouse, even though no one has been stationed there for decades. Some claim these lights move from window to window as if someone is walking the halls, performing nightly rounds that have continued long after death. Others describe the lights dimming or intensifying in response to human presence, creating a feeling that the spirits are both aware of and reacting to visitors' intentions. Shadowy figures are another frequent encounter. Witnesses describe tall, dark shapes pacing along the balcony or appearing at the base of the tower, often with movements deliberate and measured. Some figures are glimpsed through the windows, silhouetted against the night sky, while others seem to drift along the pathways leading to the lighthouse, vanishing when approached. Locals believe these shadows are the former keepers, bound by duty and memory to the lighthouse they once tended, continuing to patrol the grounds even after death. The sounds of the lighthouse also carry a haunting signature. Phantom footsteps echo across the empty halls and spiral staircases, following no discernible pattern, yet impossible to ignore. Visitors report the faint clanging of metal tools, the soft scrape of furniture being moved, and occasional whispers that seem like conversations between unseen presences. Some claim the voices are reminiscent of Hawaiian accents from decades past, carrying tones of authority, frustration, or quiet vigilance, reflecting the routines and burdens of the keepers who once worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of sailors navigating the rocky coast. One account comes from a local historian who visited the lighthouse late in the evening to photograph its architecture. As he climbed the spiral staircase, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind him. He paused, and the steps stopped as well. When he continued, the footsteps resumed, perfectly synchronized with his own, yet when he turned around, no one was there. Moments later, a light flickered at the top floor window, illuminating a shadowed figure for just a brief instant before vanishing entirely. The historian described feeling a profound mixture of awe and unease, as if he had glimpsed a world parallel to his own, governed by duty and memory. Locals also recount instances of objects moving on their own. A door left closed may be found ajar. Chairs sometimes shift slightly, and papers or logs that had been stored in the keeper's quarters are occasionally discovered out of place. Though subtle, these disturbances are consistent across decades, reinforcing the belief that the lighthouse remains actively inhabited by its spectral keepers. Visitors often report a sudden chill in the air accompanying these occurrences, a cold draft that sweeps through the tower despite the warmth of tropical nights. The history of Kaʻaina Point Lighthouse adds weight to these hauntings. Built in the early 20th century, the lighthouse was staffed by keepers who endured isolation, fierce storms, and relentless ocean spray. Some keepers and their families lived there for years, facing loneliness and the perils of coastal life. Tragedies were not uncommon. Falls from the cliffs, accidents with equipment, or sudden illness left some keepers unable to leave their posts. According to local lore, These individuals could not move on, remaining tied to the lighthouse, continuing their duties beyond the grave. Despite its eerie reputation, the lighthouse has become a place of fascination for many. Paranormal enthusiasts, photographers, and curious hikers visit Ke'eana Point to witness the spectral activity, often finding themselves confronted with sensations they cannot explain. The flickering lights, shadowy figures, and phantom sounds are reported consistently, regardless of the observer's expectations or skepticism, and faint, untraceable sounds that seem to originate from the tower itself. Some locals insist that the spirits are not malevolent but vigilant. The keeper's dedication to their duties seems to extend beyond life, ensuring the lighthouse remains protected. Visitors who approach with respect often report feeling a subtle sense of acknowledgement, a quiet presence that is watchful but not threatening. Those who are reckless, loud, or dismissive, however, may experience more intense phenomena: sudden gusts, inexplicable shadows, or the sensation of being followed through the hallways. Palolu Valley, located on the northern tip of Hawaii's Big Island, is a place of breathtaking beauty and deep, lingering mystery. Lush vegetation, carpets, steep cliffs that tumble into black sand beaches, while the Pacific Ocean crashes relentlessly against jagged rocks below. Though the valley draws hikers and adventurers for its dramatic vistas and rich history, locals warn that it is far more than a scenic destination. Palolu Valley is said to be haunted, a place where the spirits of warriors and fishermen continue to roam, guarding their ancestral lands and reminding the living of the past through subtle, eerie signs. Visitors often notice the haunting atmosphere immediately upon entering the valley. Even in daylight, the dense vegetation seems to shift unnaturally, casting shadows that move independently of the sun. A sudden chill can sweep through the valley, despite the tropical warmth of the island, and the wind often carries faint murmurs that vanish as soon as they are focused upon. Hikers and photographers alike report a heightened awareness of unseen presences, a sense that the valley itself is alive with memory and energy, and that those who walk through it are being silently observed. Shadowy forms are among the most common phenomena reported in Palolu Valley. Witnesses describe human-like shapes moving through the dense ferns, appearing and disappearing between tree trunks, or pacing along cliff edges. These figures are rarely seen in full detail. They are often glimpsed from the corner of the eye, a blur of motion that dissolves when attention is turned directly toward them. Locals believe these shadows are the spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors, guardians of the valley who patrol the land even in the modern era. Some figures are described as carrying the presence of authority and vigilance, as if continuing their duties of protection centuries after their passing. The sounds of Palolu Valley add to its eerie reputation. Many visitors report hearing distant chants, faint at first and carried by the wind, often resembling ancient ceremonial calls. The chants sometimes appear rhythmic, almost musical, and are occasionally accompanied by low, guttural murmurs that seem to echo from the cliffs themselves. On more than one occasion, hikers have described hearing voices rising and falling in volume as they traverse the trails, creating the sensation of being surrounded by a chorus of unseen participants. These auditory phenomena are often accompanied by the sensation of movement around the listener, a subtle but unmistakable feeling that the spirits are present and aware. The valley's connection to the sea also plays a significant role in its haunting. Fishermen who once lived along Palolu's shores are said to linger in spirit, keeping watch over the waters and cliffs. On calm nights, some visitors have reported seeing figures standing at the water's edge, silhouetted against the moonlit ocean, as if preparing nets or observing the waves. The figures vanish when approached, leaving only footprints in the sand that disappear moments later, as though swallowed by the earth. The sound of splashing can be heard, even when the tide is low, a reminder that the spirits of those lost at sea remain tied to the valley's coastline. One hiker recounted an experience near the base of the cliffs where the black sand meets the ocean. As he paused to photograph the dramatic scenery, he noticed a shadow moving along the vegetation above him. The figure was humanoid, but indistinct, appearing almost translucent as it glided between the ferns. A sudden gust of wind swept across the valley, chilling him to the bone, and a faint, distant chant seemed to drift down the cliffs. When he looked around, the shadow had vanished, but the sensation of being watched lingered, leaving him unsettled, yet strangely reverent. Palulu Valley's haunting is not limited to shadowy sightings and sounds. Many visitors report a profound change in temperature, often abrupt and localized. A warm sunlit path can suddenly turn icy, or a gentle breeze can carry a biting chill that seems to emanate from the cliffs themselves. These temperature anomalies are frequently accompanied by feelings of disorientation or heightened awareness, sensations that many interpret as a form of communication from the spirits. Locals caution that such experiences are warnings, subtle reminders to respect the land and the history it preserves. The valley's steep cliffs and jagged terrain have claimed countless lives over the centuries, adding layers to its spiritual energy. Ancient warriors once used the ridges for training and defense, while fishermen navigated the rocky coastline, sometimes meeting tragic ends in storms or accidents. Palulu spirits are thought to embody both the bravery and the sorrow of those who lived and died here. Their presence, a living memory woven into the land itself. The chanting voices, shadowy figures, and sudden chills are manifestations of this enduring connection. Evidence that the valley remains a place where the past is never truly gone. Visitors often speak of a profound sense of respect and awe after encountering the valley's supernatural activity. Many describe leaving with a heightened awareness of their surroundings, feeling the weight of history pressing subtly upon them, and sensing that the land itself remembers every footstep and echo. Even the most skeptical hikers find themselves reluctant to dismiss the experiences, as the combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena creates a compelling and often unsettling impression of an unseen presence. Palulu Valley endures as both a natural wonder and a spiritual landmark. The cliffs, beaches, and dense foliage are alive not only with the sound of waves and birds, but also with the memory of those who have walked the land before. Shadowy forms glide through the vegetation, sudden chills ripple along the skin, and distant chants drift on the wind, linking the living to the ancestral past. For those who venture here, the valley offers more than scenic beauty. It provides a glimpse into a world where the spirits of warriors and fishermen remain ever vigilant, a haunting testament to the enduring connection between people and the land they called home. Niʻihau, one of the remote northwestern Hawaiian Islands, is a place where the ocean crashes violently against sheer cliffs and winds sweep across jagged terrain with relentless force. Its isolation has preserved it from modern development, leaving it a rugged sanctuary of history, mystery, and legend. Among the island's most intriguing features are the ancient Polynesian ruins scattered across its rocky plateaus. These remnants of human habitation, stone platforms, terraces, and small structures stand as silent witnesses to a past long forgotten by most. Yet for those who visit, the ruins are anything but silent. Researchers, archaeologists, and explorers have reported unsettling phenomena, shadowy movements, whispers in languages no one understands, and the persistent sensation of being observed by unseen eyes. The first impression one often receives upon setting foot on Niʻihau is the overwhelming sense of isolation. Even during daylight, when the sun bathes the rocky landscape in warm light, the island feels vast and alive with unseen activity. The stone ruins, weathered by centuries of wind and salt, seem to hum with energy, as if holding the memories of those who built and inhabited them. The layout of the ruins indicates careful planning and cultural significance, suggesting that this small, inhospitable island was once a center of ceremony and daily life. Visitors often remark on the feeling that the land itself is watching, that every step taken among the ruins carries weight beyond the physical. Shadowy movements are among the most frequently reported phenomena on Niʻihau. Researchers exploring the ruins have described fleeting figures darting between the stone structures, vanishing when observed directly. These shadows are rarely full forms, often appearing as shifting darkness along the edges of vision, yet their presence is undeniable. Some have reported seeing figures resembling ancient Polynesians walking the terraces or performing tasks in areas long abandoned. Locals and historians speculate that these are the lingering spirits of those who once lived and labored on the island. Their essence imprinted on the land in a way that transcends time. Auditory phenomena are equally disturbing and mysterious. Visitors frequently report whispers carried on the wind, voices speaking in languages no living person seems to understand. These murmurs are soft, often barely audible, yet unmistakably human. At times, they rise to a clear, melodic chant, echoing across the cliffs and terraces, and then vanish as suddenly as they appeared. Some researchers believe these sounds are remnants of rituals performed centuries ago, echoes of ceremonies meant to honor gods, ancestors, or the land itself. Others interpret them as attempts by the spirits to communicate with the living, to make their presence known without breaking the natural quiet of the island. Many who explore Niʻihau describe an unshakable sensation of being watched. Even when alone, a subtle pressure seems to follow them through the ruins, an awareness that something unseen is observing every movement. Hikers and archaeologists often report feeling a chill when standing near certain platforms or terraces, as if the air itself is infused with energy. Objects sometimes appear out of place, small stones shifted from their original positions, footprints in soft sand near the ruins, or marks on the stone walls that suggest human or supernatural interaction. These occurrences, subtle though they may be, reinforce the notion that Niʻihau is not merely a historical site, but a place alive with spiritual activity. One team of researchers recounts an evening spent at the largest terrace, studying the layout and construction techniques of the stone walls. As the sun set, they noticed faint shadows moving between structures, appearing and disappearing with unnatural speed. Soon after, a low, melodic chant drifted across the terrace, its source impossible to pinpoint. The team felt a mix of awe and unease, unable to deny the presence of something beyond their understanding. Niʻihau's harsh climate and rugged terrain amplify the haunting. Winds whip across the cliffs with sudden intensity, carrying the scent of salt and earth, while waves crash against the base of the island with thunderous force. These natural elements interact with the ruins in ways that seem to enhance the supernatural experience. A sudden gust can create shadows that appear animated, or the echo of a wave can resemble a distant chant. Visitors often describe the air as charged, a mixture of electricity and tension that heightens awareness and amplifies any sense of otherworldly presence. The history of Niʻihau adds layers of meaning to its hauntings. Polynesians settled on the island long before European contact, enduring harsh conditions while creating a community that could survive in isolation. Archaeological evidence suggests that the island was used for fishing, agriculture, and ceremonial purposes. The lives of its inhabitants were undoubtedly difficult, their connection to the land profound and spiritual. It is believed that the spirits lingering on Niʻihau are those who never left, bound to the island by love, duty, or unresolved purpose, continuing to walk among the terraces and platforms long after death. Even for the most skeptical visitors, Niʻihau's ruins evoke a deep sense of reverence. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena, the shadowy figures, the whispers, the sensation of being watched, creates an experience that cannot be dismissed as imagination alone. Those who venture to the island often report leaving with a profound respect for its history and the spirits that inhabit it. Many return to recount tales of fleeting figures, unexplained sounds, and the palpable energy that seems to cling to every stone and crevice. Niʻihau's ancestral ruins endure as a place where the past and present intersect. The stone terraces, platforms, and structures are more than archaeological artifacts. They are conduits for memory, preserving the presence of ancient Polynesians and the energy of their lives. Shadowy forms glide between the ruins, whispers drift on the wind, and the feeling of being observed never fully fades. Visitors leave the island with a sense of wonder and unease, aware that Niʻihau is not merely a remote location in the Pacific, but a sacred space where spirits of the past continue to dwell, guarding their legacy and silently reminding the living of the enduring connection between people and land. Maui's Laperos Bay is a place where rugged lava fields meet the restless Pacific, a remote and hauntingly beautiful coastline shaped by centuries of volcanic activity. The bay is named after the French explorer Jean-François de la Pérouse, who sailed past these shores in the late 18th century. Yet long before European contact, this area was a vital part of Hawaiian life. Today, it is a site of natural wonder and historical significance. But locals and visitors alike insist that La Pérouse Bay is haunted. Ghostly fishermen are said to roam the shoreline at night. Splashes echo across calm waters without explanation, and mysterious lights flicker over the black lava rocks. Shadowy figures are reported near the ruins of abandoned settlements, leaving an unsettling impression that the past has never truly left. The first thing many notice when visiting La Pérouse Bay is the raw, unrelenting beauty of the landscape. Jagged lava flows stretch for miles along the coast, their dark surfaces sharply contrasting with the turquoise ocean. Waves crash against the rocks with a rhythmic intensity, and the wind carries both the scent of salt and the energy of the untamed sea. While the area is popular for daytime hikers and snorkelers, those who stay until sunset or return after dark often report a profound shift in atmosphere. The bay takes on an eerie stillness, punctuated by subtle sounds and movements that suggest the presence of unseen watchers. One of the most common phenomena reported at La Pérouse Bay involves ghostly fishermen. Locals tell stories of spectral figures standing waist-deep in the water, casting nets or lines as if continuing routines begun centuries ago. Witnesses often describe these figures as translucent, illuminated faintly by moonlight, with movements so precise and natural that it is impossible to dismiss them as trickery of the mind. Attempts to approach these apparitions often result in them vanishing, leaving only the ripple of water where their presence had been. Some claim the figures pause to glance toward the shore, as if acknowledging the living before dissolving into the night. Sounds at La Pérouse Bay add to its haunting reputation. Many visitors report hearing splashes in calm waters, occurring in places where no one is swimming or boating. The splashes are often rhythmic, almost as if someone is working deliberately in the surf. Accompanying these sounds, faint footsteps or soft whispers can sometimes be heard along the lava rocks. Some hikers describe the sensation of being followed by an unseen presence, a subtle pressure in the air, or the fleeting impression of a shadow moving at the edge of vision. These auditory phenomena contribute to a sense that the bay is alive with memory, replaying the actions of those who once relied on its waters for sustenance. Mysterious lights over the lava rocks are another feature of La Pérouse Bay's supernatural reputation. Visitors have reported small, flickering glows hovering above the jagged terrain, sometimes appearing as orbs, other times as lines tracing the contours of the lava flows. The lights often move in ways that defy natural explanation, rising and falling, darting suddenly, or hovering motionless despite wind and waves. Some locals interpret these lights as the spirits of fishermen guiding lost souls, while others suggest they are remnants of ancient rituals, residual energy left behind by those who inhabited the bay long ago. Shadowy figures are frequently seen near the abandoned settlements that dot the lava fields. These ruins, remnants of centuries-old Hawaiian communities, were once thriving hubs of fishing and agriculture. Today, they lie in quiet desolation, yet witnesses insist that the dead have not abandoned the area. Figures are sometimes observed pacing along the crumbled walls, moving between structures as if tending to chores left unfinished. They are often glimpsed fleetingly, a dark shape slipping between ruins or a silhouette against the night sky, vanishing the moment anyone attempts to focus on them. The sense of presence is unmistakable, an energy that lingers in the air like a dense fog. One night, a group of hikers camped near the lava flows recounted a series of unnerving experiences. As they sat around their fire, they heard splashes from the water and glimpsed figures standing in the surf. The shadows moved with precise intent, and faint lights flickered across the rocks behind them. When the hikers attempted to investigate, the figures and lights disappeared, leaving only the sound of distant waves. The group reported sudden chills sweeping across the campsite, as though invisible hands were brushing past, and the whisper of voices, unintelligible yet unmistakably human, drifted on the wind. They left the bay before dawn, unsettled but unable to deny the encounters. Leperos Bay's haunting is deeply connected to its history and geography. The lava rocks, black and jagged, preserve the echoes of human activity over centuries. The ocean, relentless and unpredictable, has claimed countless lives, from fishermen lost at sea to travelers swept away by sudden currents. The combination of natural hazards and historical significance has created an area where memory and energy seem embedded in the landscape itself. For many, the bay is a place where the past continues to interact with the present, a place where spirits walk, fish, and watch the living from the shadows. Even for those who approach the bay with skepticism, the phenomena are difficult to ignore. The flickering lights, ghostly figures, unexplained splashes, and whispers in the wind create an atmosphere that feels profoundly alive, though in a way beyond the natural world. Visitors often leave with a lingering sense of unease and wonder, aware that Leperos Bay is not merely a picturesque coastline, but a liminal space where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin. The spirits of fishermen, the echoes of abandoned settlements, and the mysterious lights serve as reminders that the history of human interaction with the bay is never truly gone. Leperos Bay endures as a place of haunting beauty, where the jagged lava rocks meet the restless sea and the air is thick with memory. Ghostly fishermen continue their silent labor, splashes echo over calm waters, and mysterious lights flicker above the rocks. Shadowy figures wander near abandoned settlements, and those who visit feel the weight of centuries pressing subtly upon them. It is a place where the past persists, where the spirits of the bay continue their eternal watch, and where the living are granted only fleeting glimpses of the unseen world that thrives just beyond perception. Oahu's Makulea Beach stretches along the island's northern shore, a place of serene beauty where golden sand meets the restless Pacific Ocean. By day, the beach is a destination for sunbathers, surfers, and fishermen, but locals warn that it is far more than a picturesque coastline. Makulea Beach is said to be cursed by the spirits of those lost at sea, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin, and where the ocean carries not only the waves but the echoes of tragedy. Visitors have reported ghostly figures wandering the sands, phantom canoes gliding silently across the water, and whispers carried on the wind, audible even when the beach is entirely deserted. The haunting of Makulea Beach begins subtly. The moment one steps onto the sand, there is often a feeling of being observed, an inexplicable weight in the air that seems to press lightly against the skin. Even during calm days, the wind can shift suddenly, bringing with it cold gusts or a change in the sound of the waves. Hikers and beachgoers report moments where the familiar rhythm of surf and wind seems altered, as if the ocean itself is responding to unseen presences. Shadowy figures appear at the edges of vision, disappearing whenever attention is focused upon them, and an eerie sense of anticipation often hangs over the shoreline. Ghostly figures are the most frequently reported phenomena. Witnesses describe human-like shapes walking along the sand or standing waist-deep in the water. These apparitions are often translucent, glowing faintly in the moonlight or casting dark silhouettes against the horizon. Some appear to mimic the movements of fishermen, casting nets, hauling lines, or tending to invisible boats. Others are observed sitting or standing in solitary contemplation, as if guarding the coastline or mourning a life lost to the sea. Visitors often report that the figures vanish when approached, leaving only footprints or disturbed sand in their place, as if the spirits exist just beyond the reach of the living. Phantom canoes are another element of Makulea Beach's spectral lore. Several accounts describe small boats gliding silently across the water, uncrewed yet moving with deliberate intent. The canoes are sometimes illuminated by a faint, otherworldly glow, their movement smooth and purposeful against the gentle waves. Observers often feel a chill when these apparitions appear, accompanied by the sensation that the spirits are aware of their presence. Many believe the canoes carry the souls of fishermen who perished offshore, eternally traversing the waters they once relied upon for sustenance. Whispers on the wind add a haunting layer to the beach's reputation. Even when the sand is empty and the waves are calm, visitors sometimes hear faint voices, speaking in a language no one can understand. The whispers are often soft, carried across the sand and through the palms, yet unmistakably human. Some describe hearing conversations between unseen figures, while others report hearing single words or calls that seem urgent and laden with emotion. These auditory phenomena are often accompanied by subtle movements of the wind or sudden temperature shifts, leaving those present with a deep sense of unease and awareness that they are not alone. One visitor recounted an experience at dusk, walking along the far end of Makulea Beach, where the sand meets jagged lava formations. As he paused to admire the view, he noticed a dark shape standing at the edge of the water. The figure appeared to be hauling a net, its movements precise and deliberate. When he stepped closer, the shape vanished, leaving only a small ripple in the water. Moments later, he heard faint whispers drifting through the air, unintelligible yet unmistakably human. The chill that accompanied the sounds lingered long after he left the beach, and he returned home with a sense that Makulea Beach had imprinted itself on his memory. Another account comes from a small group of hikers who visited the beach after sunset. As they walked along the shore, they saw a canoe gliding silently over the waves, its faint glow reflecting on the water. The group reported that despite calm conditions, the canoe moved as though guided by an unseen hand, pausing briefly before continuing toward the horizon. Around the same time, one of the hikers noticed a shadowy figure walking along the sand, moving deliberately toward the group before disappearing completely. The experience left them shaken and respectful of the island's supernatural reputation. Makulea Beach's haunting is closely tied to its history and geography. The northern shores of Oahu were once active fishing grounds, and countless lives were lost to the unpredictable currents and sudden storms that swept through the area. Generations of Hawaiians relied on the ocean for survival, forming a deep spiritual connection to the land and sea. The legends of ghosts and phantom canoes are believed to be a continuation of this relationship, a way for the spirits to remain connected to the places they cherished and to warn or interact with the living. Even for skeptical visitors, Makulea Beach leaves a lasting impression. The combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena, the shadowy figures, phantom canoes, and whispers on the wind, creates an atmosphere that is difficult to ignore. Those who approach with respect often experience fleeting glimpses or sensations that vanish before explanation, while those who trespass recklessly sometimes report more intense and unnerving encounters. The beach itself seems to respond to human presence, a living reminder that the spirits of the past are never truly gone. Waipio Valley, often called the Valley of the Kings, lies on the northern coast of Hawaii's Big Island, a place of verdant cliffs, cascading waterfalls, and winding rivers. It is one of the island's most breathtaking landscapes. Yet beneath its lush beauty lies a history steeped in legend and spiritual significance. For centuries, Waipio was home to Hawaiian royalty, warriors, and commoners alike, and locals insist that the valley is haunted by the spirits of those who once lived, fought, and died there. Visitors frequently report seeing shadowy figures along the cliffs, hearing distant drums echo through the night, and experiencing an unshakable feeling of being watched, as if the valley itself is alive with memory and the presence of the past. The first sensation many notice upon entering Waipio Valley is the overwhelming scale and solitude of the landscape. Steep cliffs rise dramatically on either side, their faces covered in dense vegetation, while waterfalls tumble into the river that winds toward the sea. Even during daylight, the valley feels ancient and powerful, a place where every rock and tree carries the weight of history. Hikers often describe a subtle change in the air as they descend into the valley, a slight drop in temperature, a stillness in the wind, and a sense that the environment is responding to their presence. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena in Waipio Valley. Visitors describe dark silhouettes moving along the cliffs or standing silently near the river, often disappearing when approached. Some figures are humanoid, appearing to wear traditional Hawaiian garments or carrying spears, evoking the presence of warriors long past. Others seem to glide through the dense foliage, unbound by the constraints of gravity or terrain. Witnesses often experience a mix of fear and awe, sensing both the authority and the solemnity of these spectral presences. Locals believe that these figures are guardians of the valley, ancestral spirits who continue to watch over the land, honoring the traditions and lives of their forebears. The sounds of Waipio Valley also contribute to its haunted reputation. On calm nights, hikers and overnight campers have reported hearing distant drums, rhythmic and low, as if summoning spirits or echoing ancient ceremonies. The source of the drums is often impossible to locate, as the valley's cliffs and foliage distort sound and conceal its origin. Accompanying these rhythms are faint chants, whispers, or calls that seem to move with the wind. Visitors often describe these sounds as both melodic and eerie, evoking images of rituals performed under moonlight by ancestors who once lived in the valley. The auditory experience can be so vivid that even the most skeptical hikers find themselves pausing, listening intently, and feeling the presence of something beyond the physical world. Many report the sensation of being watched throughout their visit to Waipio Valley. The feeling is often subtle, at first a prickling awareness along the back of the neck, the sense of unseen eyes following each step. As one moves deeper into the valley, this sensation can intensify, especially near the cliffs or riverbanks, areas historically associated with significant activity by ancient Hawaiians. Some hikers have described sudden chills or unexplained gusts of wind that seem to brush past them, moments when the environment itself feels almost sentient, as though the spirits are observing, testing, or acknowledging the living who dared to enter their domain. One memorable account comes from a small group of researchers documenting the valley's flora and archaeology. As twilight approached, they noticed a shadow moving along the cliffs opposite their position. It seemed humanoid, carrying the stance of a warrior, surveying the terrain. Moments later, rhythmic drumming echoed across the valley, low and steady, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. No human could have produced a sound from such a distance, and the figures they glimpsed vanished as quickly as they appeared. The researchers described feeling a mixture of reverence and unease, aware that they had witnessed the presence of ancestral spirits guarding their sacred home. The geography of Waipio Valley enhances its supernatural aura. Its steep walls create natural acoustics that carry sound in unusual ways, and the dense foliage and shadowed areas provide perfect hiding places for visual illusions. Yet, even when accounting for these natural explanations, many phenomena remain inexplicable. Ghostly figures appear where no human could stand. Whispers seem to come from every direction, and the sensation of unseen eyes persists regardless of time or weather. The valley's history of royal habitation, warfare, and daily life lends credence to the idea that spirits linger, bound to the land by memory, duty, or unresolved purpose. Another aspect of Waipio's haunting involves interactions with the river and waterfalls. Hikers report seeing spectral figures emerge from the spray or move along the riverbanks, sometimes pausing to gaze upstream or downstream before vanishing. The sound of water occasionally carries more than natural splashes. Some claim to hear laughter, sighs, or even distant shouting echoing across the river, as if the spirits are replaying moments of life long past. These manifestations are not confined to night alone. Visitors at dawn and dusk report similar experiences, further suggesting that the valley's energy is persistent and unbound by conventional notions of time. Despite the haunting, many describe Waipio Valley as a place of profound respect and reverence. The spirits are not considered malevolent but vigilant, preserving the memory and dignity of the valley and its history. Those who approach with care and mindfulness often feel a subtle acknowledgement from the unseen presences, a sense that they are being observed but not threatened. Visitors are reminded that they tread upon sacred land, where every step carries the weight of centuries, and where the living are fleeting guests in a domain governed by ancestral spirits. Waipio Valley endures as a landscape of both natural splendor and supernatural significance. Shadowy figures glide along cliffs, distant drums echo through the night, and the feeling of being watched never truly fades. The valley preserves the memory of warriors, rulers, and commoners alike, their presence woven into every waterfall, tree, and rock. Visitors leave with a sense of awe and humility, aware that Waipio is more than a scenic destination. It is a living monument to the past, haunted by those who continue to walk, watch, and guard the valley, ensuring that its history and spiritual significance are never forgotten. And there you have it, 25 haunted islands in Hawaii, where locals dare not tread. Shadows move silently across cliffs, and whispers from the past echo endlessly. These islands remind us that paradise can hide darkness, and some spirits are never at rest. If this journey into Hawaii's forbidden islands sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another ghostly tale. Until next time, tread carefully, because some islands are haunted not just by memory, but by the restless souls who call them home.